Marvel, I inherited the Shadow Realm. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201, Crisis of Stark Industries. John's face was full of helplessness. Pietro was not surprised by his answer. He said calmly, I also know that this matter is difficult, so you are not the only one involved in this operation, so you can rest assured that you only need to speak up when we need you. Hearing this, John's originally tense mind relaxed, and the whole person breathed a sigh of relief. It's not that he should face Stark Industries alone. If he faces Stark Industries alone, he will be courting death, but if there are a group of people, it will be completely different. The United States also emphasizes that the law does not punish the masses. As long as there are enough people and the power is strong enough, even Stark Industries can't do anything to all of them. So that's the case, Mr. Pietro. Don't worry, I will do my best and won't let you down. John patted his chest and promised. Pietro stretched out his hand to the Hydra member beside him. Soon, the Hydra member handed over a bank card. Pietro took the bank card and pushed it forward. John looked at this scene and his face was full of smiles, but he still said politely, What are you doing, Mr. Pietro? It's my duty to help you. After that, Pietro smiled and said, Let's put it in a different way. We at Hydra can't let you work for nothing. After that, John no longer refused and took it directly, with a brighter smile on his face. In the next few hours, Pietro didn't go anywhere, but contacted one congressman after another in the villa. These people more or less had a certain relationship with Hydra, plus some candidates who were contacted secretly. Hydra organized hundreds of people. It was not until after sunset that the villa became quiet. Pietro leaned on the sofa and rubbed his nose, his face full of fatigue. At this time, footsteps came from upstairs, and soon Wanda, dressed in red, came down from upstairs. Looking at Pietro on the sofa, Wanda's cold voice suddenly rang out. Does it make sense to do this? With that guy's strength, even if Stark Industries collapses, it won't have any impact at all. I don't know what the point of you doing this is. Hearing this, Pietro glanced at Wanda and said indifferently, That's not necessarily true. Unless he doesn't live on Blue Star, the collapse of a giant company is enough to make him feel painful. Besides, this is just a test. If we can get that guy to take action directly and cause hostility from the upper echelons of the United States, we will make a lot of money. Don't underestimate these countries. Their strength is much stronger than you think. Listening to Pietro's explanation, Wanda shrugged indifferently. Then what should we do next? Wait, we have already made a move. Now it's up to him. I want to see if he will break the rules. After that, the two chatted for a few more words and then dispersed. Soon, time came to Monday. Today is the day for the US Congress to hold a parliamentary session. One by one, politicians and congressmen who used to only appear on TV went to Congress. At first, Congress proceeded normally, but in the second half, someone proposed that Stark Industries violated US law and sold weapons to the Middle East government forces, which was treason and must be sanctioned. In the past, such a proposal would be a joke. As long as the benefits were sufficient, arms dealers could sell weapons to anyone. Almost 99% of the wars in the world were behind the shadow of arms dealers. They acted as the behind-the-scenes pushers and manipulated the wars, so such accusations were ignored at ordinary times. But this time, Hydra took action to connect too many congressmen, so when the vote was initiated, more than 2/3 of the congressmen on the scene agreed to sanction Stark Industries. Most of them were Hydra people, but some of them had grudges against Stark Industries. Driven by these people, Stark Industries, which was as stable as Mount Tay in the past, became precarious in an instant. Because this scene happened too suddenly, Stark Industries was caught off guard. They were unprepared and could only watch the proposal pass. It can be said that, if the proposal is completely passed, it will definitely cause a major earthquake, and the entire Stark Industries may collapse overnight. But fortunately, at the critical moment, the White House used his veto power to temporarily stop the proposal. In his words, this matter is of great importance and needs to be studied further. But even so, Stark Industries is still in a dangerous situation. If Stark Industries does not find a way to overwhelm those guys in the next parliament, once the proposal is passed, it will be a terrible disaster. Although the Cheeble is terrible, it is still unrealistic to compete with a complete sovereign country. In the Stark Industrial Building, Potts listened to the congressional information on the phone, and his face became more solemn than ever. After the call was hung up, Potts' body softened and slumped directly in the office chair. She was always calm, but she was a little panicked at this moment. Fortunately, after this period of training, her mentality has become much stronger. She quickly adjusted her mentality and quickly made a phone call. The first thing is to contact officials close to Scott Industries and ask them to help find out who is targeting Stark Industries. The second is to contact those congressmen and strive for votes. As long as this proposal is rejected in the next parliament, the crisis of Stark Industries will naturally disappear. If it can't be done, then Stark Industries will be in real danger. Therefore, Potts didn't even have time to drink a sip of water and made one call after another. But compared with the previous respectful attitude, the attitude of all the congressmen changed immediately after Potts made the call this time. Either perfunctory or silent, some even simply didn't answer the phone. This made Potts' heart sink continuously and gradually sank to the bottom. Finally, after hanging up the phone again, the strong look on her face disappeared, replaced by a weak look. Tears filled her eyes, and endless grievances burst out in her heart at this moment. Finally, she picked up the phone and called Tony. On the other end of the phone, Tony was lying on the balcony enjoying the sunbath. As a qualified hands-off boss, Tony didn't pay attention to the situation of Stark Industries at all. Every day, he just enjoyed himself. So even though the outside was already turbulent, Tony was still indifferent at this moment. As the phone rang, Tony glanced at the number and answered the call directly, smiling. "Potts, how come you have time to call me today? Did you miss me?" As soon as he finished speaking, Potts' crying voice came from the other end of the phone. "Tony." Hearing the voice, Tony, who was lying on the recliner, sat up directly, and the smile on his face disappeared instantly, but his tone was still gentle. "Potts, what happened? Tell me slowly, don't cry." Chapter 202, The Temptation of Immortality. Tony spoke softly, and Potts on the other end of the phone quickly calmed down, and then slowly recounted what happened. Tony had been listening quietly, with no intention of speaking. After listening, his voice rang out, "So that's how it is. Well, don't worry, leave it to me, I'll handle it." Can you handle it?" Potts was a little skeptical. Hearing this, Tony's mouth curled up, and he said slowly, "Don't worry, there is nothing I can't handle. You should have a good rest first. I'll come to see you when I'm done." After that, Tony took the initiative to hang up the phone. As the phone was hung up, Tony's voice full of chills suddenly rang out in the villa. A bunch of unknown things actually betrayed and sought death. Number 1, find the addresses of those guys for me. Okay, I'm checking. Number 1's voice rang out. Compared with Jarvis, number 1 was indeed more than one level behind, but Tony didn't care about these, as long as he could complete the task he assigned. Soon, a projection screen appeared on the wall. It was a map of New York City with red dots on it. Those were all the congressmen who were targeting Stark Industries. There were also some black dots, which were originally standing beside Stark Industries, but now they saw that the situation was not good and turned around to stab Stark Industries. Looking at the marked location on the map, Tony's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then he went upstairs to change his clothes and drove his silver-white supercar away from the beach villa in Liberty City. Manhattan Shield, a gathering place for economy and politics, is also the place where most congressmen live. Tony drove into a villa area, finally got out of the car, and walked towards the villa. Along the way, he was thinking about how to solve this incident of Stark Industries. If it was just about force, Tony didn't need to pay attention to these people at all. If they really dared to give any orders, Tony would let them know what cruelty was. However, although force is good, it is not omnipotent. After all, this is a society ruled by law. Unless he intends to completely tear his face, he cannot completely trample the law under his feet. Therefore, after thinking all the way, Tony soon had a new idea in his mind. As the saying goes, the world is bustling, all for profit. In Tony's opinion, the reason why Stark Industries was targeted was because Stark Industries had encroached on the interests of too many people, so it was targeted by everyone. Therefore, if he wanted to solve this matter, he had to give benefits that no one could refuse. In this way, not only could he perfectly solve this matter, but he could also build a difficult to break protection network for Stark Industries to prevent such a thing from happening again. But the question is, everyone knows the truth, so what kind of benefits should be used to help these people? Pure money? Not to mention that some effects are ineffective, but such a relationship is definitely not reliable enough. Women, beauties? When the social status reaches a certain level, it is basically impossible for these people to lack women around them, so it won't work. In addition to these two, ordinary people may have no tricks, but Tony has a third choice, which is also his confidence in solving this matter. Lifespan. He can help people prolong their lives. Of course, this is not Tony's ability, but the role of the eternal holy grail he found in the treasure house of the gods domain before. This thing, which is regarded as a chicken rib by the gods in the divine domain, is a real treasure on Blue Star. If it is publicized, it may even cause the Third World War. After all, no one can resist the temptation of immortality. This is the greatest fear of every short-lived species. Ding dong. The doorbell of the villa rang, and soon a female voice came. I'm here. Not long after, the door was opened, and a middle-aged woman dressed as a nanny looked at Tony in confusion. Excuse me, who are you looking for? Is Congressman Mark here? Tony said gentlemanly, with a warm smile on his face. The nanny was stunned for a moment, then quickly lowered her head with a blush and whispered, wait here, I'll go and notify them for you. Okay, thank you. Tony nodded slowly, being very polite. When the owner of the villa heard the nanny's report, his face suddenly changed, and he hurriedly walked out and came to the door. After seeing Tony's figure clearly, Mark lowered his head instantly. Mr. Tony, why are you here? If you have anything to tell me, why do you have to come here in person? Mark said respectfully, but Tony's face did not show much expression, and at the same time, information about Mark also emerged in his mind. He is one of the congressmen supported by Stark Industries. He is usually the voice of Stark Industries, and is deeply trusted by POTS. And this time, it was he who took the lead in stabbing Stark Industries. As a voice, he did not say a word in the previous Congress, and allowed Stark Industries to be targeted. It is precisely because of this that all the congressmen who favor Stark Industries have no effective leadership. Their power is completely dispersed, and they are completely suppressed. Therefore, Stark Industries has become what it is now, and this guy has contributed a lot to it. Facing such a person, Tony naturally would not have a good face. But he was not in a hurry to deal with the other party. He was very curious about who was behind the planning and organization of this matter, and who could make such a big fuss. Although this was just his guess, anyone with a discerning eye could see that if there was no one to organize them, these congressmen would have nothing better to do than attack Stark Industries. Why, you won't invite me in? Tony said slowly. Mark patted his head suddenly and said with a smile on his face, I forgot. Mr. Tony, please forgive me. Please come in. Mark made a gesture of invitation, but Tony still noticed a hint of reluctance on his face. It was obvious that he didn't want to let himself in. However, the more this happened, the more he wanted to go in. At that moment, Tony walked directly into the villa and sat down, as if he was back home without being polite. Mr. Tony, is there anything I can do for you? Mark asked again. And Tony laughed lightly in an instant. You politicians are really dirty. At this time, you are still fooling me. Do you think I will be fooled so easily by you? Tony said disdainfully. Don't look at Mark's nice words, but in fact, whether something can be completed or not is still up to him. So, this guy was just trying to get rid of him with this attitude. Unfortunately, Tony, who had seen through it, was fooled and even mocked him directly. Why, do you want to be a dog on both sides? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203 Petro's Anxiety. Tony said bluntly, his words pierced into Mark's heart like a knife, making his expression gradually become ugly. Mr. Tony, what do you mean by this? Although you funded me, I have also done a lot for you over the years. We are in a cooperative relationship, and I'm not your subordinate. Mark said righteously, and Tony laughed out loud when he heard this, but he was not here to argue with Mark about this issue. Adjusting a comfortable sitting position, Tony leaned on the sofa and said calmly, tell me, who is targeting Stark Industries? Tell the truth. This is your last chance. How should I know? I'm on your side. Mark spread his hands and pretended to be stupid. Seeing his appearance, Tony's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. You are so confident. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Mr. Tony, what do you mean by this? How do I know who Stark Industries has offended? Shouldn't you ask yourselves about this matter? Why do you come to ask me? Mark continued to play dumb, and Tony completely lost his patience. Pop. He flicked his fingertips lightly, and suddenly, a shadow ninja appeared behind Mark, and the cold blade instantly fell on his finger. Mark, who had no reaction at all, only felt a pain in his finger, and his little finger was directly out of his palm. Ah! Mark screamed in a moment of intense pain. Fuck. Bastard. When did he appear here? Mark covered his right hand, looked at the shadow ninja behind him with a face full of shock and anger, and roared at Tony. Tony was naturally indifferent to this. He just took a sip of the teacup on the table and said casually, you can continue to perfunctorily answer me, but if your answer does not satisfy me, he will cut off one of your fingers each time. Don't worry, his skills are good. He will cut off your fingers, if he says so. He will not hurt other parts of your body. Tony's tone was as calm as ever, but behind this calmness was a fear that made people feel from the heart. For a moment, Mark was furious and said, madman, you are so crazy. You are committing a crime. I must expose your behavior. Just wait to go to jail. After saying that, he cursed and turned around to leave. Unfortunately, he did not know that when Tony entered the door, some things were beyond his control. Cut off another finger of his. Tony said slowly without even looking at Mark, who wanted to run away. As his voice fell, the figure of the black shadow ninja flashed past Mark in an instant. Mark felt a chill on his hand, and the next second his ring finger broke off. Ah! A scream full of pain sounded, and Mark instantly knelt on one knee. Beads of sweat kept sliding down his forehead, and his face became extremely pale. Tony's calm words continued to ring at the side. Don't you want to say it? I really didn't see that you are still a hard bone. But it doesn't matter, we can play slowly. You have 10 fingers, 10 toes, plus limbs, torso, and head. You still have a lot of capital, let's play slowly. At the end of his words, Tony chuckled. His laughter fell into Mark's ears, just like the voice of a devil, completely breaking his psychological defense line. I say. Please, spare me, I say. It was Hydra's people. They found me, and threatened me with my family, so I betrayed. I can't help it. I still have parents, wife, and children. I really didn't mean it. Mark kept crying, with a look of returning to the right path. But Tony didn't want to appreciate his acting skills. After getting the answer he wanted, Mark had completely lost his value. Send him to see God, clean it up. After saying that, Tony stood up and walked out the door, and Mark's face was instantly filled with fear. Before he could say anything, he suddenly felt that he was flying directly, and then he saw a black shadow ninja standing behind a headless corpse. The corpse looked so familiar. Thinking of this, Mark's consciousness completely fell into darkness. On the other side, Tony walked towards the door. As soon as he turned the corner, he saw the nanny who opened the door for him just now. At this moment, she was holding a plate in her hand and standing there with a look of fear. No one knew how long she had been standing here and what she heard. Seeing this, Tony stopped immediately with a trace of helplessness on his face and said, "It's okay, don't be afraid, close your eyes obediently, it will be over soon." He spoke softly and slowly walked past the nanny. After he left, the nanny fell to the ground directly, and a black shadow ninja was cleaning up the body. When he walked out of the door, the shadow ninja had cleaned the house behind him. Except that no one was there. It was no different from before Tony came to visit. Sitting in his silver white supercar, Tony drove away at the end of the street. Next, he would continue to visit other congressmen. Today was destined to be a sleepless night. In the villa of Hydra's base, Pietro listened to the report of his men, and his face gradually became gloomy. 2 hours ago, news came that some congressmen who originally belonged to Stark Industries and later defected to them disappeared. Hearing this news, Pietro knew that Stark Industries had counterattacked. So he immediately sent people to the homes of these disappeared congressmen to collect evidence, trying to catch Stark Industries' handle, but because the scene was cleaned up by the Shadow Army, they not only did not find evidence, but were even discovered by the patrolling police, becoming the first suspect of the disappearance of the congressman. After Pietro reacted, he felt something was wrong, and notified their congressman to be careful. However, when he called, no one answered, as if everyone was dead. This gave Pietro a bad feeling. He felt as if things were out of his control. Damn it, are all those guys dead? How is that possible? Pietro kept cursing. At this time, a Hydra member walked in quickly and said seriously, "Sir, we have found out that the congressmen who defected to us have all gone to Stark Industries. According to the investigation, it seems that they were invited by Tony." Hearing this, the anger on Pietro's face disappeared, and his brows frowned instantly. Tony? What does he want to do? Could he kill everyone? Pietro muttered to himself. He didn't believe Tony would do this. After all, the disappearance of a few congressmen and the disappearance of all congressmen are two completely different things. Chapter 204. Death will bid farewell to humanity. Stark Industries building, conference room. The conference room was full of people, but they were not from Stark Industries, but from the various members of Congress. At this moment, everyone was silent with a serious face, and the depressing atmosphere enveloped the entire conference room. 2 hours ago, they all received a call from Stark Industries, inviting them to a gathering. Of course, this was just a superficial statement. In fact, everyone knew that Stark Industries was going to attack the previous incident in Congress. If they were only invited, they would naturally not come, but the caller specifically mentioned that all members were invited. So after weighing the pros and cons, everyone came whether they were willing or not. After all, if you don't come, other members will be won over by Stark Industries. If Stark Industries starts to retaliate afterwards, who can stand it? Although Stark Industries was forced into a corner in Congress before, no one dared to underestimate the power of Stark Industries. If it weren't for all of them sticking together, it would be a daydream for a few members to shake Stark Industries. Therefore, facing the invitation of Stark Industries, whether they are willing or not, they have to come. When they arrived at Stark Industries, they were taken to the conference room. They have been sitting here until now, and no one has come to take care of them. For a while, everyone's patience began to wear out. Finally, John was the first one to stand up in the crowd and said with an unhappy face, "Fuck, what the hell is Stark Industries doing?" They gathered us together and no one came out. Are they playing tricks on us? Hearing John's words, many congressmen present turned their eyes to him, and no one spoke up. For a while, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Fortunately, John was thick-skinned enough and didn't care. Instead, he winked at a congressman who also belonged to Hydra. It was a white old man named George. Seeing John's hint, George coughed lightly and immediately supported him. What Congressman John said is right. We are all very busy. Stark Industries gathered us here, and no one received us. Obviously, they didn't take us seriously. It's really too much. The two sang and shouted, and the patience of the people kept wearing out after a long wait, and they became more and more impatient. Therefore, the originally quiet conference room gradually had more voices of discussion, all complaining about Stark Industries. Seeing this, both of them showed a hint of joy in their eyes. They were all Hydra people, although they didn't know what Stark Industries was gathering them together for. But since their boss wanted to defeat Stark Industries, they naturally wouldn't give Stark Industries a chance to do public relations. Originally, their idea was to cause trouble for Stark Industries during the negotiation with Stark Industries, but they didn't expect Stark Industries to leave all of them here. Don't blame them for being rude. If they didn't take this opportunity to put some eye drops on Stark Industries, then all their years of political life would be in vain. So, looking at the dissatisfaction of the crowd, both of them nodded with satisfaction, then looked at each other, participated in the discussion of the crowd, and continued to put some eye drops on Stark Industries. In this way, another half an hour passed, and the originally depressing atmosphere in the conference room disappeared, replaced by an atmosphere of common hatred and hatred. If it weren't for the last bit of scruples about Stark Industries, I'm afraid everyone would have gotten up and left at this moment. And at this moment, footsteps finally came from outside the door. Suddenly, everyone who heard the voice stopped discussing and looked towards the door. When the door of the conference room was pushed open and Tony appeared in front of everyone recognized Tony's identity at the first time. Although Tony has been very low-key recently, as a frequent visitor of Playboy and the head of Stark Industries, his appearance is still very recognizable. Tony, who entered the door, also walked to the first seat at the conference table and sat down with a smile on his face. "I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long." Tony apologized directly as soon as he opened his mouth, which made many people present look much better. Don't care that Tony's apology contained some sincerity, but at least everyone can get away with it. However, John and the others obviously didn't want to let Tony go just like that. In addition, the two of them had already linked up before, so they turned their faces directly. "Mr. Tony is so arrogant that he actually left us hanging for more than 2 hours. If you don't know, you would think you are busy with some national affairs," John said sarcastically. After the words fell, everyone felt more or less pleased. After all, they had waited for so long. How could they say they had no resentment in their hearts? It was just that, because Stark Industries had not collapsed, no one wanted to confront Stark Industries head on. Tony's expression did not change at all when he heard John's words, but he said in a steady tone, "Who are you?" Tony's words were very serious, without any perfunctory meaning. But it was precisely because of this that John's face flushed instantly. As a dignified congressman, didn't he even have the qualifications for people to remember his name clearly? Thinking of this, John was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood, but he still suppressed his anger and reported his name. "John Snake." John gritted his teeth. Tony shook his head directly. "Don't tell me your name. I don't want to know. If you don't want to wait, you can leave. I haven't restricted your freedom of life. It's the same for everyone present. Whoever doesn't want to wait can leave now." As soon as these words came out, the anger in everyone's heart was ignited again. However, they were not ordinary people. Everyone here was a fox. They had been waiting for so long. Before Tony showed his purpose, they were not willing to leave easily. So, although they were full of anger, no one got up and left after Tony's voice fell. Even John, who was targeted, was the same. As a member of Hydra, he wanted to find out Tony's purpose. After all, knowing yourself and the enemy is the key to victory. Seeing that everyone had calmed down, Tony smiled again. "Okay, since you haven't said anything, then I will tell you the reason why I called you here. After our Stark Industries research, we have finally solved the problem that has plagued mankind for thousands of years, life and death. In other words, from now on, death will completely bid farewell to mankind. Do you understand what this means? This means that the immortality pursued by the ancient kings will be presented in our time," Tony said in an excited tone, and the conference room suddenly fell silent. Chapter 205, Rejuvenation in Public. The conference room was completely silent. Everyone looked at Tony, as if he were a fool. Immortality is easy to say, but how many people have been able to achieve it since ancient times? For a moment, many people showed mockery on their faces. Although they didn't say it, everyone thought that Tony was crazy. Looking at the expressions of the crowd, Tony naturally knew what they were thinking. Although they were considered the elite among ordinary people, they were still about the same as ants in the entire universe. And how could ants understand the thoughts of humans? So, looking at the mockery on everyone's faces, Tony didn't get angry, and even raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "It seems that you don't believe it. It doesn't matter. I can verify it for you now. After speaking, Tony clapped his hands, and the door of the conference room was pushed open again. Potts walked in with a glass of water. This was the water of life that Tony prepared in advance with the cup of eternity. Ordinary people who drink it can not only gain immortality, but also return to youth. Putting the cup of water on the table in front of Tony, Potts stood beside Tony obediently without saying a word. Tony also knocked on the table at this moment, diverting everyone's attention from the water of life. To put it bluntly, even if everyone didn't believe that Tony could really make people immortal, at this time, they still couldn't help but look at the water of life, holding the thought of just in case. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on him again, Tony leaned back slightly, glanced at the crowd, and said with a smile, "Everyone, the opportunity of immortality is now in front of you. Who wants to try it?" Tony said in a calm tone, and everyone present suddenly looked at each other in bewilderment. As I said before, they didn't trust Tony, so no one dared to be the first person to try it. So when Tony mentioned it at this moment, although they were very tempted, no one had the courage to come up and try it. Seeing this, Tony didn't urge them. He believed that there would always be someone who would come out, whether it was for the desire in his heart or to expose the situation he created, so he was not in a hurry. Just like this, there was silence for several minutes, and finally, John stood up from the crowd. "I'll do it." John straightened his suit and said with a righteous look. He didn't really want to be the first to do this, but he wanted to expose Tony's lies in person and completely defeat Stark Industries. In addition, once he succeeds, he can also gain a lot of prestige among the people. These can all be converted into substantial benefits, so he doesn't mind taking some risks. Of course, this is also because he knows very well that Tony will definitely not poison the water in such an occasion, so he is fearless. Leaving his seat, John strode towards Tony. Seeing this, Tony did not stop him, still with a smile on his face, and made a gesture of invitation. John glanced at Tony and snorted. The next second, he directly picked up the water in the glass and drank it all. After drinking it, John smacked his lips and sneered. "Mr. Tony, it seems that this thing is not as magical as you said. It looks like a cup of ordinary water. If that's all, then you are just playing us for fools." John couldn't wait to speak up. He wanted to avenge the insult just now. As his voice fell, Tony still sat steadily in his seat and was not in a hurry. He even comforted him. "Don't worry, wait a few more minutes, then it will be time to witness the miracle." "Okay, then I'll wait a few more minutes. I want to see what else you can do." John sneered and didn't continue to pursue him. He wanted to make Tony give up completely. At the same time, he also thought clearly that maybe what Tony took out was really not an ordinary thing, and it might really have a certain effect. But he was the person involved, and even if it had an effect, he would say it had no effect. At that time, no matter how wise Tony was, he couldn't resist his lip service. Thinking of the happy part, John even laughed. Seeing his smug look, Tony couldn't help but flash a strange color in his eyes. He was looking forward to this guy's reaction later. Time passed by little, and everyone in the conference room fixed their eyes on John. At this moment, everyone was curious. Although they still didn't think what Tony said was true, they also wanted to see how magical the things that Tony boasted to the sky were. For a while, everyone in the conference room felt like they were living a year. Finally, a few minutes passed quickly, and John felt that he didn't have any special feelings, except that his body was a little hot. Therefore, he planned to continue to make trouble. But just as he was about to speak, a sudden exclamation came from the mouths of many members in the conference room. Everyone stared at him, as if they had seen a ghost. In addition to shock, there was also envy and jealousy in their eyes. Seeing the sudden change in everyone's expression, John's heart jumped, and subconsciously said, "What happened?" After speaking, John's tone suddenly paused. Why did he feel that his voice seemed to have become younger? Illusion? Thinking in his heart, many members of the parliament who had returned to the sound finally said, "Oh my god. God, how is this possible? Oh my god, this is actually true. A miracle. Why didn't I drink that glass of water?" People either exclaimed or regretted, and most of them beat their chests and stamped their feet. Seeing the exaggerated reactions of the crowd, John could no longer suppress his curiosity and turned directly to a piece of glass. The glass in the conference room is one-way glass, but it can also reflect light and can barely be used as a mirror. When he came to the front and back of the glass, suddenly, a young face came into his eyes. Not handsome, not ugly, but this is what he looked like when he was young. Looking at this scene, John was stunned, and the whole person seemed to be cast into a spell. Standing there stupidly, his palm subconsciously touched his face, and his face quickly turned red, all because of excitement. He didn't expect that what Tony said was actually true. Although immortality is difficult to verify, the point of rejuvenation alone is enough to drive everyone crazy. Especially for people like them who have achieved success. The temptation of rejuvenation is even more terrifying than extending their lifespan. After all, what can an old body enjoy, even if it is alive? But a young body is completely different. They can enjoy everything in the world. Ha ha ha. John laughed loudly, and he could no longer suppress the excitement in his heart. As his laughter sounded, the congressmen who were originally staring at him turned their heads to look at Tony, their eyes full of passion. Chapter 206. Crazy to the point of turning into a beast. If everyone had doubts about what Tony said before, and even ridiculed him, now after seeing the changes in John, no one had any doubts anymore, and only had one thought, that they must get the water of life. Especially among the many congressmen, the older ones were even more crazy, and before Tony could speak, they couldn't wait to say, "Mr. Tony, from today on, we will definitely obey your orders. You can ask us to do anything. Please, give us a glass of water of life." "That's right, Mr. Tony, we apologize for what we did before. Please give us a glass of water of life," everyone said excitedly, and kept expressing their opinions, fearing that if they were a step slower, there would be no water of life. On the other side, John was originally immersed in his own world, but the voices of many congressmen pulled him out of his own world. Looking at the crazy people, John's smile froze, and his heart was a little tangled. Should he continue to complete the task assigned by Hydra? If he didn't get the water of life, he would definitely put the Hydra task aside. After all, nothing is more important than rejuvenation. However, he has already drunk the water of life, so the temptation of the water of life to him has become dispensable. So, after thinking for a while, he finally decided to continue to complete the task. So, looking at the crazy people, John hurriedly coughed a few times, attracting everyone's attention and said, "Everyone, calm down. Although the changes in my body are amazing, who knows if there will be any side effects? Don't be fooled by Stark Industries." John kept telling everyone about the dangers and tried to scare them, but he forgot that human nature is greedy. At this moment, everyone only has the amazing effect of rejuvenation, and they don't care about any side effects. It can be done. Under the stimulation of rejuvenation, this group of people are now crazy and have long lost their calm judgment. Therefore, his words not only did not work, but aroused everyone's jealousy. "Fuck. Bastard. You drank the water of life and you want to stop us. Get out." "That's right, that cup of water of life should have been ours, but this bastard got it," someone said unhappily, and everyone was jealous of him. For a moment, everyone looked at him with angry eyes, wishing to tear him to pieces. John was also shocked when he saw this. At this moment, he had only one thought in his mind: these guys were crazy. He was afraid that, if he continued to talk, these guys might tear him to pieces, so he couldn't help but shut his mouth. Seeing that he didn't speak, everyone was too lazy to pay attention to him, and turned to look at Tony with eager eyes. Looking at everyone's attitude, Tony, who was in control of the initiative, was naturally not in a hurry at this moment, and even had the mood to watch them fight each other. Seeing that Tony didn't speak for a long time, the depressing atmosphere filled the conference room again, and everyone was full of tension, fearing that they would lose this opportunity. Fortunately, Tony didn't let them wait too long. Just when they were about to hold back, Tony's voice suddenly rang out. "It's not impossible to want the water of life, but why should I give it to you? Just because of your words? Do you really think I'm a fool?" After the words fell, everyone was stunned. No one spoke for a while, but looked at each other. Then, "Mr. Tony, what are your conditions?" No matter what the conditions are, we will definitely complete them. One of the people in the crowd spoke up, and everyone agreed. My conditions are actually not difficult. There must be forces among you who are specifically targeting me. Find those people, and I will give the rest of you the water of life. How about it? After this, the faces of several people in the crowd suddenly changed, and the person who spoke just now nodded without thinking. No problem, Mr. Tony. After saying this, his fierce eyes fell on the crowd and soon stared at George. Old man, I've been annoyed with you for a long time. After saying this person pounced on George directly. His eyes were as fierce as a hungry wolf. Poor George is already in his 50s this year, and it's not an exaggeration to say that he is 60 years old because of too much pressure. Now that he was attacked, George was knocked to the ground. While he was confused, the congressman who spoke did not hesitate at all and swung his fist to hit his head. Suddenly, George screamed and his head quickly became bloody. Seeing this scene, everyone present was stunned. They did not expect things to turn out like this. However, before they could organize, another congressman in the crowd said, "What are you waiting for? There are not many people targeting Mr. Tony." After saying that, he rushed directly to a person he knew and started fighting. After his reminder, the people who were still stunned also reacted. If everyone was caught, and they did nothing, would Tony still give them the water of life? Everyone was uncertain, but no one dared to gamble, so the congressmen who relied on Hydra were miserable. In order to win over many congressmen before, their identities were basically exposed. Now, under the targeting of everyone, the Hydra congressmen were knocked to the ground one after another. For a moment, the conference room turned into a large-scale group fight. Except for John, who was watching the scene blankly, everyone joined in the fight. Tony was like a god, sitting steadily, smiling as he watched everyone fighting like wild animals, without any intention of stopping. Soon, all the congressmen who had their backs against Hydra fainted, with blood on their heads. Even George, who was targeted at the beginning, had completely lost his breath in the beating of the crowd. After all, he was old, and could not withstand such a beating. And when the congressman who started the fight first stopped, Tony nodded with satisfaction. "What's your name?" "Ficonus, Mr. Tony." Fick said respectfully, and Tony nodded. "Well done. I will prepare a portion of the water of life for you." "Thank you, Mr. Tony." Fick instantly fell into ecstasy. When the many congressmen around who had originally planned to stop heard this, they looked at George's fate. A flash of enlightenment flashed in everyone's eyes, and they stopped holding back and attacked instantly. These counselors, who were considered gentle and polite in the eyes of the outside world, now showed their most brutal side under the stimulation of interests. For their own interests, they can sacrifice anyone. Chapter 207. Since you can't resist, enjoy it. Huff. Heavy panting echoed throughout the conference room, and all the counselors looked embarrassed. John looked at these beast-like guys from the side, his eyes full of fear. Just now, these guys beat several counselors from the Hydra side to death, and they were completely crazy. This made John, the only one alive, full of fear. For a while, he shrank in the corner and trembled. If he could, he wanted to leave here as soon as possible, but the door of the conference room had been blocked long ago, and he had nowhere to run, even if he wanted to. Fortunately, no one noticed him for the time being, which was the only consolation. And many counselors who had completed their tasks also looked at Tony with a flattering face at this moment. Their expressions were like pugs, wagging their tails, and begging for mercy in front of their masters, praying for a little reward. And Tony did not embarrass them this time, and even applauded them. "Yes, you all didn't disappoint me. Don't worry, I will give you everything you want." After saying that, Tony turned his head and glanced at Potts beside him. Potts nodded knowingly and turned around and walked out of the conference room. Soon, Potts came in with a group of people. Everyone held a glass of water in their hands. Those who didn't know thought it was just ordinary boiled water, but those who knew stared at the cups in Potts' hands with hungry eyes. Soon, a cup was placed in front of all the congressmen. Looking at the cups in front of them, and the clear water shaking in the cups, everyone subconsciously swallowed their saliva. If Tony hadn't spoken yet, I'm afraid everyone would have picked up the cups and drank them all. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Tony showed a bright smile on his face. Drink it." After the words fell, everyone didn't hesitate at all and drank the water of life in front of them. Soon, a few minutes later, a transformation appeared in the conference room. Everyone could clearly feel that they were several years younger and their bodies were much more relaxed. However, everyone frowned at the same time, because this did not achieve the effect they wanted. After John drank the water of life, he completely turned into a young man. People would believe that he was in his 20s. Although they were much younger, they were still the same age, which naturally made everyone feel dissatisfied. Fortunately, with the previous lessons, everyone did not rebel immediately, but just wondered, "Mr. Tony, why does it feel a little different?" a congressman said tactfully. Hearing this, Tony raised his hand and pressed it, signaling everyone to stay calm, and then slowly explained, "I will naturally answer your doubts for you. Eternal life or returning to youth. It is a rapid and gradual process. Once it starts, it cannot be interrupted. Every 3 months, you need to drink a glass of water of life to achieve the desired effect." "What about him?" a congressman pointed at John, who was hiding in the corner. Seeing this, Tony smiled immediately. "What he drinks is different from you. He drinks a one-time water of life, which will make him return to youth instantly, but the price is that he can only live for 1 hour. Now the time should be about right." At this point, Tony raised his wrist and looked at the watch on his wrist. Hearing this, everyone present was stunned for a moment, but the most excited one must be John. After knowing that he only had 1 hour to live, John was like being hit on the head by a sledgehammer. He was completely stunned. When he came to his senses and was about to fight Tony, Tony put down his wrist and smiled. "Time's up." As soon as he finished speaking, a horrifying scene happened. John's body aged at a speed visible to the naked eye. His originally young face was covered with wrinkles in a few breaths and aged rapidly. Just as he was about to make a move, he took a step forward and fell directly to the ground. As his body fell, the collision sound that everyone imagined did not occur. Instead, a cloud of dust was instantly raised, and John's figure disappeared on the ground, leaving only a pool of white dust. Seeing such a horrifying scene, everyone was completely stunned, and even many people could not accept it at all for a while. Their eyes were full of fear. What frightened them even more was what Tony said next. Friendly reminder to everyone, remember to drink the water of life once every 3 months, otherwise, you will become like him and die of aging in an instant. Tony's tone was still gentle, but the meaning of his words made everyone present feel terrified. At this moment, they suddenly remembered the side effects that John mentioned, but they had not taken care of them before. But now, thinking about the horrible end, everyone shuddered. At the same time, they also knew that this time, they were completely tied to Stark Industries. Once Stark Industries or Tony was finished, they would be completely finished. Thinking of this, many congressmen who had come back to their senses couldn't help but smile bitterly. But there was not much regret. After all, even if you think about it now, you can regain your youth, and the side effects are nothing. Even if you have to be a dog for Stark Industries in the future, it doesn't seem to be a big loss to gain immortality and regain your youth. Thinking of this, everyone was relieved and no longer entangled in the horrible side effects. Instead, they began to plan how to perform better and let Tony see more value. It must be said that these people are people who know the times. To use Tony's words in his previous life, life is like rape. Since you can't resist, choose to enjoy it. After dealing with these guys, Tony didn't stay any longer and got up and left the meeting room. As for the things in the meeting room, naturally someone cleaned them up, so Tony didn't need to spend time. He was not afraid of someone investigating. This matter involved 2/3 of the members of Congress. Even if it was found out, what would happen? Could they take down all these people in one go? So, power cannot be too concentrated. Once it is concentrated, it will be a devil that can do whatever it wants. Now Stark Industries has tied up 2/3 of the members of Congress. In the future, it can't say that it can walk sideways in the United States, but it is almost there. Even the person in the White House may not be able to resist. It can be said that from now on, no one or force in the United States can pose a threat to Stark Industries. After leaving Stark Industries, Tony went straight back to the beach villa. Next, he had to deal with those guys from Hydra. However, he got rid of those people before he had time to interrogate them, so if he wanted to catch these rats in the dark, he still needed a helper. Chapter 208. The long-awaited Black Shadow Army attacks the beach villa. After entering the villa, before Tony could find Jarvis, he saw Jarvis and Loki sitting on the sofa in the living room. Looking at the two, Tony's eyes flashed with surprise. How did these two otakus come out? Thinking with some doubts in his heart, Tony asked directly, "Why did you come out? Is the research completed?" Hearing the voice, Loki and Jarvis turned back to look at Tony at the same time, and Jarvis's voice also sounded, "Sir, there was a little accident. My body can't support my operation, so I need a new body." Hearing this, Tony was confused. He understood every word Jarvis said, but he couldn't understand it when they were put together. Tony couldn't help but look at Loki at the moment. Seeing this, Loki couldn't help but explain, "In short, his software is too advanced, and the hardware can't keep up. Continuing to run will cause the hardware to burn out, so he needs to replace a new body." Got it? Tony nodded. "Then change it. You can change anybody you want. You can choose it yourself, and I will send it to you later," Tony said generously, looking like he didn't lack money. "Sir, I want to replace the vibranium material, but there is no channel to buy it," Jarvis stated his request. As a new intelligent life, he did not know what politeness was, so he said the best when he spoke. Hearing this, Tony could not help but frown. He knew that vibranium was rare. It was not a small amount to use vibranium to build a body for Jarvis. If he relied on purchasing alone, Tony could use the military's purchasing channels to get it done, but God knew how long it would take. For a moment, Tony felt a little embarrassed, but the big talk had been said, and he could only bite the bullet and solve it. Otherwise, it would damage his image. However, before solving this matter, he had to solve those Hydra mice first. After sorting out his thoughts, Tony immediately looked up and said, "I know, I will solve this matter. Please help me check the base of the Hydra organization in Neo. "Okay, sir." Jarvis nodded and then directly connected to the wireless network. But in terms of strength, Jarvis, who has become a living body, is not enough for Tony to fight with one hand. But on the internet, Jarvis, who has evolved into a living being, can be said to be the god of the internet world. He can mobilize everything related to the internet, and can also search for all the information Tony wants to know on the internet. Therefore, although Tony did not provide any clues, Jarvis quickly found the traces of Hydra through the big data search on the internet. A few seconds later, Jarvis, who had been silent, suddenly said, "Sir, it's done. A total of 13 Hydra bases have been found." After saying that, Jarvis reported the names of the bases one by one, and after getting the exact address, Tony's mind moved, and the Shadow Corps was dispatched instantly. Through the Shadow Kingdom, the Shadow Corps can rush to these places at the fastest speed. As for Tony, he was naturally too lazy to run. The reason why he acted before was because the Shadow Corps was not suitable for dealing with those congressmen, and Tony had nothing to do, so he went there in person. Now, no matter how strong Hydra is, it is just a small fish in Tony's eyes. The evolved Shadow Corps is enough to deal with them. Naturally, he doesn't need to go there in person. Soon, the base of Hydra in Neo suffered a devastating blow. All Hydra members in the 12 bases were easily dealt with by the Shadow Corps. Although they were equipped with advanced individual technology, and even 2 bases had extraordinary people in charge. But these were completely useless in front of the evolved Shadow Corps, and they were all easily dealt with. Only the villa where Pietro was located caused the Shadow Corps to encounter a little trouble. In the Hydra base villa, Pietro was waiting for the people below to feed back the news, and more than a dozen Hydra members were guarding the villa. Suddenly, a black shadow walked out from behind the Hydra member and killed a Hydra member with a knife. At the same time, other Hydra members suffered the same treatment. For a while, the bodies of Hydra members fell to the ground around the villa, which instantly alarmed Pietro and the villa. Pietro suddenly stood up from his position and looked outside the villa with a sharp gaze. At the same time, his voice rang out at this moment, "Wanda." As soon as the words fell, boom. A loud bang came from upstairs. A black shadow ninja was blown away, and then Wanda, who activated her ability, also walked out of the room. However, the Black Shadow Ninja that was blown away was obviously not hurt too much. He stood up quickly, staring at Wanda with scalded eyes, and launched an attack again. At the same time, more Black Shadow Ninjas walked out from the ground and the wall, and directly surrounded Pietro and Wanda. Looking at this scene, Pietro's face instantly became solemn, and Wanda also said at this moment, "Be careful, they are very strong." After the words fell, the Black Shadow Ninjas instantly launched an attack. Pietro's eyes moved, and his figure instantly turned into a phantom, blowing away many Black Shadow Ninjas that pounced on him. In order to pursue lethality, each of his blows fell on the head of the Black Shadow Ninja, striving to kill the enemy with one blow. But things were completely different from what he imagined. The Black Shadow Ninjas that were blown away did not suffer any damage at all. After their evolution, their strength and defense were greatly enhanced, and Pietro was completely unable to break through their defense. This made Pietro's pupils shrink instantly, and a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. Although he was not good at strength, he couldn't even break the defense of these guys. This was too exaggerated. Not only did he encounter trouble here, but Wanda upstairs was also in trouble at the moment. She tried to use chaos magic to modify reality and make these Black Shadow Ninjas disappear directly. But not only did she fail, but she was backfired. Helplessly, she could only use magic balls to bombard, and terrifying explosions continued to sound. This time, she finally broke the defense of the Black Shadow Ninjas, and several Black Shadow Ninjas were vaporized on the spot. But soon, more Black Shadow Ninjas emerged from the ground again, which greatly increased her pressure. At that moment, Wanda couldn't help but yelled, "Don't entangle, these guys are monsters, take me away." Hearing the voice, Pietro, who was still in shock, instantly came back to his senses, and then the super light speed was activated again, and his figure disappeared instantly, and even Wanda upstairs disappeared with him. This is something the Shadow Legion cannot match. Although their speed is not slow, it is still far behind Pietro, who specializes in this field. And all of this was seen by Tony, who was watching the battle through the perspective of the Shadow Legion. Chapter 209. Women will only affect his computing speed. Quicksilver? Scarlet Witch? Tony muttered to himself in the villa, with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Although he knew that it was Hydra behind the scenes, he didn't expect that these two guys would be dispatched this time. According to the original book, Scarlet Witch is Jarvis's wife. Of course, she should be called Vision. But now, robots don't have any reason to fall in love. They should just work for themselves. Women will only affect his computing speed. Thinking nonsense in his heart, Tony couldn't help but smile, and didn't take it to heart anymore. That Quicksilver is really fast, except for his own shadow army. It is estimated that no one can catch up with him. So Tony was too lazy to continue wasting time chasing him. It wouldn't be too late to meet him one day. But Jarvis's body replacement can't be delayed. He is still waiting for them to get a set of armor to enjoy. So, since the Hydra bases have basically been pulled out, then the next step is to find a way to solve Jarvis's physical problem. It should be impossible to purchase vibranium from various channels. After all, the annual purchase volume of vibranium, a rare metal, is limited, and Tony can't take all the vibranium for himself. Even if he takes it for himself, it will be a drop in the bucket, so he can only start directly from the origin. If I remember correctly, vibranium is a metal unique to Wakanda. The world's vibranium is also exported from this country. Although they export most of it every year, Tony doesn't believe that they don't have any stock. So, Tony plans to go to Wakanda. Of course, his purpose is not only this. Vibranium alone is not worth his personal trip. He also has another purpose, which is to see if he can bring back Wakanda's Prince T'Challa. After all, he is a future superhero, so he can't miss it easily. Besides, he is still waiting to gather the 12 spells, but he has been a little neglected during this period and has not received any rewards. Of course, since he is going to go far away, he still has to explain what he should explain. At least he should notify Potts, and he can't just leave. So, Tony went directly to the neighborhood where Potts lived at night, slept for a night, and boarded the plane to Wakanda the next day. Of course, Tony was not alone, and he brought Natasha with him this time. After all, Natasha was still his secretary, so it was not reasonable for the boss to go out to work, and the secretary to stay at home. Just when Tony was heading to Wakanda, Quicksilver and his partner, who had been hiding in an abandoned warehouse in New York City for a night, finally breathed a sigh of relief. After leaving the villa last night, the two came to this remote place. Since they were going to deal with Tony, they naturally knew Tony's intelligence, and knew that he had a shadow army under his command. As expected, it was Tony's shadow army that attacked them yesterday. Although they didn't know how Tony found them, the appearance of the shadow army undoubtedly told them that they were exposed. So, in order to hide themselves, they had to hide in this remote place to prevent Tony from chasing them. Fortunately, after a night, Tony's pursuit did not come, which meant that they were temporarily safe. Of course, if they knew that Tony had no time to deal with them, they would probably be so depressed that they would vomit blood. After leaving the warehouse, Wanda looked at Quicksilver's tired face and said, "What should we do now? Your previous plan doesn't seem to work." After speaking, Quicksilver's mouth twitched, and then he took a deep breath and said, "It doesn't matter. It was just a test, but I didn't expect Tony's reaction to be so big. We need help. We can't deal with that guy with just the two of us." Hearing this, Wanda's face suddenly became more solemn. "Do we need to launch it in advance? There is no other way. This is the only way. Otherwise, we will never think of revenge." "Okay, then I'll go collect the sacrifices." Wanda nodded and turned to leave. But at this time, Quicksilver suddenly stopped him. "Don't worry, how long will it take for us to collect it ourselves? Find someone else to help. Our bases have been destroyed. Who can help us?" Wanda asked in confusion. They had contacted the Hydra members at other bases last night, but none of them could be contacted. Obviously, they were all in danger. So the two of them are now alone, unless they wait for a while to transfer manpower from other places. Seeing Wanda's puzzled look, Quicksilver smiled. "Don't forget, there is S.H.I.E.L.D. They are our partners now." Hearing this, Wanda was not happy, but frowned more and more. "Will they help us? This time we have to use living people as sacrifices." Wanda was a little pessimistic, but Quicksilver didn't think so. "Don't worry, they will definitely help us. Believe me, go and meet them with me first. Even if they really refuse, it won't be too late for us to take action then." After saying that, Wanda finally nodded and said, "Okay." After that, the two left the abandoned warehouse and went to S.H.I.E.L.D. When Quicksilver and the others appeared here, they walked in directly and openly. After reporting Nick's name, the S.H.I.E.L.D. members went in and reported directly. After a while, Nick's assistant came to pick up the two, but the look in his eyes when he looked at the two seemed a little resentful. He remembered that he was knocked out by these two guys last time. However, neither Quicksilver nor Wanda took him, a small figure, seriously, so they completely ignored his gaze. After a while, the two came to Nick's office. The assistant left directly, and Nick put down the things in his hands and looked at the two. "What are you two doing here this time?" Nick said indifferently, and a trace of embarrassment flashed across Quicksilver's face. The last time they met, he boasted loudly, but in just a few days, he became like this now, and he had to come to ask for help, which was really embarrassing. However, all the embarrassment was nothing compared to the hatred for Tony, so he quickly adjusted his state and said, "Director Nick, we are here to ask you for help. We need a group of people, and I hope you can provide them for us." Hearing this, Nick's expression did not change at all, but there was a hint of ridicule in his tone. "It seems that all the people in Hydra are dead, otherwise they would not come to me for help." After the words fell, Quicksilver became even more embarrassed. "You know everything? New Io is my base camp after all. It shouldn't be difficult to get some news." Nick shrugged. At this moment, Quicksilver took a deep breath and said slowly, "Since you know everything, I won't beat around the bush. Our attempt did fail, but it doesn't mean that our plan has failed. Just tell me if you can help us or not." After saying that, Quicksilver stared at Nick closely, and Nick did not answer immediately. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210. 1,868 people served as sacrifices. The depressing atmosphere permeated the entire office. Although Quicksilver was confident, he was actually not sure at all. At the moment, he could only gamble that Nick wanted to get rid of Tony more than he did. So, he stared at Nick intently, trying to put pressure on Nick in this way. Looking at his appearance, Nick couldn't help but reveal a playful smile on his face. As an old fox, Quicksilver's method seemed too immature to him. But there was one thing he was not wrong about. That is, Nick really wanted to get rid of Tony more than he did. You can ask me for help, but you have to tell me what your trump card is. I want to see the effect, otherwise I can only apologize. Nick said slowly, with a hint of curiosity in his tone. He wanted to ask the last time they talked, but unfortunately this guy was stubborn. This time, Nick must find out. Cooperation is cooperation, but he did not forget that the positions of the two sides were different, so he naturally had to find out everything. Listening to Nick's words, Quicksilver felt a little helpless. The fewer people who knew about the trump card, the better, so he didn't want to tell Nick. But who made him ask for help now, so he had to say it. Quicksilver exhaled a foul breath and said slowly, I contacted a doctor who can deal with Tony, and he has a grudge against Tony, so he will help us deal with him. Hearing this, Nick frowned immediately. Doctor? Excuse me, ordinary people are not qualified to participate in such disputes, Nick said in an unhappy tone. At this moment, he felt that he was being fooled. It's not the doctor you think, but a doctor from another world, Dr. Doom. Quicksilver explained quickly. After hearing this name, Nick's face instantly became serious. He didn't forget the scene when he was besieging Reed before. After all, their shield suffered heavy losses in that battle. And there was also a doctor called Dr. Doom at that time. Where is the other world you are talking about? Hell. Quicksilver said helplessly. Since he had already said it, he was too lazy to hide it, and just said it all. After hearing the word hell, Nick's mind suddenly rang with what Thor had said before, and Hela seemed to have walked out of hell. Thinking of this, Nick immediately said, I need to discuss this matter. You wait here. After saying that, without giving Quicksilver a chance to refuse, Nick stood up and walked out of the office. After leaving the office, Nick went directly to the training room. This is a place built by S.H.I.E.L.D. at a high price, specially prepared for Captain and others, where various abilities can be trained. When Nick appeared in the training room, Captain and others were exercising their abilities, and Hela was also resting with her eyes closed in a corner, holding a glass of red wine in her hand. Since coming to Blue Star, Hela has been obsessed with red wine. It's not that she likes the taste of red wine, but she likes the elegant feeling when holding red wine. Seeing Hela, Nick walked up directly. After coming close, before he could speak, Hela's casual voice suddenly sounded. Mortal, what do you want from me? Hearing this, Nick's mouth twitched. Compared with Thor's arrogance, Hela is even more arrogant. Fortunately, after so long, Nick has gotten used to it. Mortals are mortals. Anyway, he is indeed just a mortal. Suppressing the depression in his heart, Nick said politely, there is indeed something I need to consult you about. I heard from Thor that you have been to hell before, so I wonder if you know about Dr. Doom. Nick was careful with his words, fearing that he would say the wrong thing. After all, Hela has a bad temper. Fortunately, Hela did not care about his words, but after listening to him, she immediately let out a light exclamation. Mortal, how did you know this name? Hela was a little curious. Nick immediately explained. So that's how it is. I haven't met Dr. Doom much, but I did hear many people mention him when I was in hell. He is a scary guy with strong strength. As for the specifics, I don't know. Hearing this, Nick immediately felt confident. Even Hela said that guy was scary. Obviously, he was a terrifying strong man. In this way, Nick felt more confident in dealing with Tony. Thank you Ms. Hela for telling me. I'll leave first. After thanking him, Nick turned around and left the training room and returned to the office. In the office, Quicksilver was waiting restlessly. As the one asking for help, the feeling of waiting was really anxious. Therefore, when Nick came in, Quicksilver immediately stood up and said, how about it? Director Nick, just give me a definite answer. After that, Nick didn't hesitate and nodded directly. No problem, I agree to help you, but you have to tell me how many people you want, and what you want them for. No problem, I want 1,868 people to serve as sacrifices, open the passage to hell, and usher in Dr. Doom. At this point, Quicksilver was too lazy to consider Nick's reaction. If he agreed, he agreed. If he disagreed, he would find another way, so he told the truth directly. Nick was indeed shocked. More than 1,000 people served as sacrifices. Nick frowned. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want to do such a thing. But from another perspective, more than 1,000 people in exchange for a strong man is not a loss, and he doesn't need to choose those innocent people. There are many people in prison who are extremely evil. Because there is no death penalty in the United States, they are able to survive in prison. Now that it is needed, he does not mind using these people's lives to make a contribution. Anyway, they are all a bunch of scum, and it is a waste of food to keep them alive. With some determination in his heart, Nick nodded and said, "No problem, leave it to me." After that, Nick picked up the phone on the table and made a call. As a department with unlimited power in the United States, it is a trivial matter to transfer prisoners from prison. He does not even need to cover up anything. He can directly use human experiments as an excuse, and the prison will know what to do. After all, everyone knows the dangers of human experiments, so basically they transfer serious criminals. After the call, Nick turned to look at Quicksilver with a smile on his face and said, "I wish you a happy cooperation in advance." Hearing this, Quicksilver stretched out his hand and shook hands with Nick. "Happy cooperation. It will take another day to mobilize personnel. Are you waiting here? We'll just wait at SHIELD." Quicksilver smiled. Of course, he would not say that they had nowhere to go now. "Okay, then I'll have someone arrange for you to stay first." After saying that, Nick called his assistant and arranged accommodation for the two of them. He also had someone watch them and not allow them to run around in SHIELD. Chapter 211 Canvas shoes, white coat, gold-rimmed glasses. Time passed quickly. When the sun rose to the sky at noon the next day, the selected prisoners were escorted to SHIELD. Nick immediately notified Quicksilver and his sister. When they received the news and came to the office, Nick asked directly, "Now that the people have arrived, what should we do next?" "Find a secret place. I want to carve magic circle. It's better to be remote, because it may make a lot of noise." After hearing the request, Nick nodded and arranged for them to set off directly. He also took Hela and Thor with him. There was no way. He had to be on guard against the guy that Hela called scary. In SHIELD, only the brother and sister could deal with this situation. Although the captain and his men were not bad, they were still a little bit short. For this reason, Nick paid a box of Romanican tea to invite Hela. Several people took a car, a group of escorts and more than 1,000 serious criminals to the suburbs of New York, and finally stopped at a military test site. This is where the military experiments with secret weapons. It is absolutely quiet and remote, and basically no one disturbs them. After arriving at the destination, Quicksilver and the other two got busy and began to carve magic circle with some special materials. These materials were naturally provided by Nick. As the controller of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was nothing on this planet that he could not get. After 2 hours, Quicksilver and the other two carved a rectangular magic circle. Looking at the mysterious pattern on the ground, Hela and Thor were thoughtful, and Nick and the others simply could not understand it. However, with Quicksilver and Hela here, they could just ignore it. Even if something unexpected really happened, he believed that Hela and the other two could solve it. After all, they were two gods. Except for not being strong enough to deal with Tony, Nick was still very confident in them to deal with others. "What should we do now?" Nick asked directly at the returning Quicksilver. "Drive those people to the center of the magic circle." "Okay," Nick responded, and then waved to the escorts of S.H.I.E.L.D. Suddenly, dozens of trucks, one by one, were driven off the heavy criminals in prison uniforms. They were still wearing heavy handcuffs and shackles, and their faces were full of rebelliousness. After all, before being caught, these people were not simple characters. However, this time they were not facing the US Police Department, but the famous S.H.I.E.L.D., and S.H.I.E.L.D. would not be polite to them. If they were a little slow, they would be beaten directly. For a while, the sound at the scene became chaotic, and many people kept cursing. In this way, it took half an hour for the shield's talents to drive everyone to the center of the magic circle. At the same time, they used guns to intimidate everyone so that they dared not move. After doing all this, Nick looked at Quicksilver, and Quicksilver looked at Wanda. He couldn't handle the next thing, only Wanda could handle it. Looking at Quicksilver's eyes, Wanda nodded, and the next second, a chant suddenly sounded in her mouth. Her voice seemed to have some kind of magic, which made people subconsciously quiet down. Even the more than 1,000 noisy serious criminals became silent. After chanting for several minutes, suddenly, the rectangular magic circle carved on the ground suddenly flashed with red light. The originally silent serious criminals suddenly burst into a painful roar as a red light flashed. Thousands of people roared. The sound was earth-shaking, and even the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. around were shocked. It was because this place was remote. If it was in the city of New York, such a roar would be enough to alarm people within a few kilometers. The beast-like roar continued, and the red light of the magic circle became more and more dazzling. Soon, the serious criminal standing in the center of the magic circle suddenly exploded. It was not an adjective, but a live explosion, as if it was burst by something. After the first one, there was soon a second, a third. In the end, it was as if a chain reaction had been triggered, and the bodies of the serious criminals in the center of the magic circle exploded one after another. For a moment, everyone saw a scene of blood and flesh flying in front of them, and many people around vomited on the spot. They were all elites of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they had more than one life on their hands. But at this moment, they still couldn't bear to see this terrifying scene. Even Nick's mouth twitched, and he felt a little nauseous. Soon, when there was no living person in the center of the magic circle, the light of the magic circle became even brighter, and it was dazzling red, like the color of blood. Gate of hell, open. Wanda shouted. Suddenly, all the flesh and blood in the magic circle were absorbed by the magic circle, and the dazzling red light directly turned into a blood-red straight line and hit the void. Boom. A violent vibration sounded, and the void produced a wave of breaking. A door slowly opened under the illumination of red light. The people around vaguely heard a creaking sound, just like a shabby wooden door being pushed open. At this time, a violent roar came from the door. After hearing this sound, many people present, including Nick, groaned. This is the whisper of the devil, which mortals cannot hear. If they hear it, their heads will explode. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Hela suddenly snorted coldly, and an invisible breath emanated directly from her. Suddenly, the roars and whispers in the door disappeared, replaced by silence. The headaches of everyone present also disappeared along with the sound in the door. Coming back to his senses, Nick looked at Hela gratefully, and was glad that he had called Hela. Otherwise, things would probably become troublesome. At that moment, Nick turned his head to look at Quicksilver and the two, and said in a deep voice, "What's going on?" The suppressed anger in his tone would make anyone who was almost killed angry at this moment. Facing Nick's accountability, Quicksilver and the two also looked innocent. It was the first time for them to do such a thing, and they didn't know that such a thing would happen. So they could only bite the bullet and explain it. After listening, seeing that the expressions of the two did not seem to be false, Nick temporarily let the two go. At this moment, footsteps sounded again in the gate of hell, and the expressions of the people outside changed, and they subconsciously covered their ears. But soon, they found that nothing happened this time. Everyone put down their hands and stared at the gate of hell. Finally, a figure appeared at the door of the gate of hell. The next second, one foot stepped out, and then the whole person walked out of the gate of hell. Everyone finally saw the appearance of the person. Canvas shoes, white coat, gold-rimmed glasses, and meticulously groomed hair. If they hadn't watched him walk out of the gate of hell, this person would look like a scientific research elite. Chapter 212 I might really die this time. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the white figure. Their eyes were full of astonishment, as if they couldn't believe that the long-awaited Doctor Doom was dressed like this. Fortunately, Nick's reaction was not slow. Although he was stunned for a moment because of his appearance, he quickly came to his senses and took the initiative to greet him. "Are you Doctor Doom?" Hearing this, Doctor Doom, who had already walked out of the gate of hell, couldn't help but look at Nick. The gate of hell behind him quickly disappeared at this moment, and a hint of elegant smile appeared on his face. "It's me. Did you release me?" "Yes." Nick nodded directly, without any intention of denying. Seeing his shameless behavior, the Quicksilver brother and sister were immediately anxious, and quickly stepped forward and said, "Hello, Doctor, we released you." Quicksilver interrupted Nick's words. Hearing this, Dr. Doom turned his head to look at the two of them. When his eyes fell on Wanda, a hint of interest flashed in his eyes. "I sense the aura of chaos magic in you. I didn't expect that there are still people practicing chaos magic nowadays. It's rare." After saying that, Dr. Doom's eyes continued to move, looking at the surrounding environment. Soon, Hela appeared in his sight. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. "It's you?" After saying that, Hela also snorted coldly at this moment. "I didn't expect it was you. If I had known it was you, I would never let you out," Hela said aggressively, but Dr. Doom was not angry, but the smile on his face became even bigger. "That's a pity. You didn't seize the opportunity." Listening to the conversation between the two, Nick and others couldn't help but show a trace of surprise on their faces. From what they said, they seemed to know each other. Just when everyone was confused, Thor on the side took the initiative to ask the doubts in everyone's hearts. "Do you know him?" "Yeah." Hela nodded, and then continued to frown and said, "A disgusting guy." Obviously, she and him are not just acquainted. Maybe there is some intersection, but it is not known whether this intersection is good or bad. For a moment, everyone was nervous, fearing that the two would fight over a disagreement, which would be embarrassing. The summoned helpers had not even joined them to fight the enemy, but they had already torn their faces. Fortunately, neither Hela nor Dr. Doom had any intention of taking action. Dr. Doom even took the initiative to ease the relationship between the two sides and said, "It's just that I extracted a trace of your lore for a search. Don't worry about it. Since you are here, we should belong to the same camp now, so how about not letting go of our grudges first?" Dr. Doom smiled and spoke, and the whole person was polite and elegant, very gentlemanly. Looking at this scene, Hela snorted lightly, but did not continue to find fault, obviously agreeing with him. For a moment, Nick and others breathed a sigh of relief. Only Thor looked at Dr. Doom with fear. After such a long time of contact, he thought he still had some understanding of Hela. His sister was completely a crazy personality, and she would never wait for revenge. The fact that he agreed to reconcile now, in addition to Tony, this guy must be very powerful, otherwise how could Hela be so easy to talk to? Thor's mind was filled with many thoughts, but he buried everything in his heart and continued to play the role of a transparent person. After dealing with Hela, Dr. Doom's eyes fell on Nick again. He could see that, although Nick's strength was not strong, he was the one who made the decision. "Since you release me, I must give something in return. I can agree to one request of yours. Tell me when you have thought it through," Dr. Doom said slowly. Hearing this, Nick's eyes suddenly lit up, but thinking about the purpose of this trip, his eyes quickly dimmed, and he said seriously, "I want to ask the doctor to join us in dealing with Tony Stark." Dr. Doom said softly, "I know this person. One of my incarnations was killed by him." At this point, Dr. Doom laughed directly, but unlike the elegant smile just now, this time, his smile seemed particularly cold. Although his face was full of smiles, it made everyone feel as if they were in winter, and they were shivering all over. "I accept your request. Then tell me where he is now." Hearing this, Nick smiled awkwardly. "Well, we still need to investigate and confirm, so how about you come back with us first, and I will arrange everything, and then we will set off," Nick suggested, and the coldness emanating from Dr. Doom instantly melted, and his smile became elegant again. "That's fine, then it will be troublesome next." Dr. Doom nodded, and immediately got into the car under the leadership of Nick. Soon, the car started, and the group quickly evacuated the place. After they left, the place became quiet again except for the residual smell of blood. SHIELD. When the group returned, Nick immediately arranged a residence for Dr. Doom. Then he activated all the intelligence networks of SHIELD to track down Tony's whereabouts. This was not a difficult task for SHIELD, and Tony did not deliberately conceal his whereabouts. So SHIELD quickly found Tony's whereabouts, the kingdom of Wakanda. After receiving the news, Nick did not tell Doctor Doom immediately, but convened all the extraordinary people of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a meeting. At the meeting, looking at the captain and others gathered, Nick coughed lightly and said to everyone, "I believe you all know what happened. We have to face that old opponent again. He is getting stronger and stronger, and the threat is getting bigger and bigger. This time, we may all die in his hands, but I hope you can fight to the death and win a glimmer of hope for this planet." Nick encouraged everyone. After all, they might really die this time. To this, everyone did not have any special reaction. Only the captain frowned and said, "How sure are we to perform this time? If we are not absolutely sure, it is not a wise choice to provoke Tony now." The captain's voice fell, and it was agreed by many people. Seeing this, Nick said in a dull tone, "What the captain said makes sense, I don't deny it. But, how can we be completely sure of dealing with that guy? We can only seize every opportunity and try our best to defeat him. This is what we should do. Otherwise, we are getting stronger, and Tony is also getting stronger, and the speed is even faster than I expected. If this goes on, we will never catch up with him," Nick said earnestly, and everyone fell silent after listening. Chapter 213 Entering the Kingdom of Wakanda. Silence permeated the conference room, and the captain and others couldn't help but recall the process of contacting Tony. Every time they met, Tony's strength would be stronger than the last time, even a little scary. It can be said that every time they thought they were well prepared, but in the end they could not match Tony. Therefore, facing Tony, they could not be completely sure. At this time, Johnny raised his hand in the crowd and said awkwardly, "Well, do we have to be enemies with Tony? I admit that the guy did act a little crazy, but he didn't seem to do anything that would offend both humans and gods. Why not? Just like now, we can live in peace, and we don't necessarily have to target him," Johnny said puzzledly, and Nick did not blame him, because Johnny was telling the truth. However, this did not mean that he would agree with Johnny's opinion, but just asked back, "Can you guarantee that Tony will always be so obedient?" After the words fell, Johnny was speechless for a moment, opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. How could he guarantee it? Seeing this, Nick still didn't let him go, or rather, he wanted to build up firm confidence in everyone by beating Johnny. Otherwise, if everyone had the same idea as Johnny, there would be no need to fight this battle and they could just admit defeat. In other words, are you sure Tony is willing to live in peace with us? Or, if one day he suddenly wants to destroy the world, what should we do then? Everyone, we can't be lucky. I know that many of you think that there is no need to fight Tony to the death. But I want to tell you that no matter how powerful a tiger locked up in a zoo is, it cannot pose a threat to humans. But if humans encounter a tiger growing in the wild, there is a 99% chance that it will die. Although there is still a 1% survival rate. Do you want to bet on this 1%? So, it's not that I want to fight Tony to the death, but we can't afford to gamble and lose. Only by completely eliminating the tiger can we be 100% safe. Now, does anyone else have the same idea as Johnny? If so, I can terminate this operation and we can spend the last time together. Nick leaned back slightly and spoke slowly, and under his gaze, Johnny lowered his head in shame. He didn't want to let others decide his fate, so he was convinced by Nick. After waiting for a long time, no one in the meeting room objected. Seeing this, Nick finally smiled. Okay, since no one is here, then this operation is confirmed. Everyone will go out and try to defeat Tony in one fell swoop. Yes. Everyone responded in unison and then dispersed. Only the captain stayed. Looking at Nick with a tired face, he pretended to be relaxed and said, "How is it?" "It's very stressful." Hearing this, Nick smiled bitterly. How can it not be small? Although Dr. Doom has joined, I still don't have much confidence in this operation. At this point, Nick sighed. Don't worry, everything will be fine. I always believe that good cannot defeat evil. The captain patted Nick on the shoulder and comforted him. After that, the captain turned around and left the meeting room. 2 hours later, a plane took off into the sky and headed for Wakanda. This time, all members of S.H.I.E.L.D. were dispatched, in addition to the Silver Brothers and Sisters and Dr. Doom. This force is definitely powerful on Blue Star. Because of Hela and Dr. Doom, even if we look at the universe, the strength of their team is not weak. but except for Dr. Deem, everyone else's faces are full of solemnity at this moment. Tony brought them too much pressure, which made them feel heavy in their hearts. In a hotel in the kingdom of Wakanda, Tony was wearing a bathrobe, holding a glass of red wine in his hand, looking down at the crowd of people below. At this time, the door of the hotel room was knocked, and Tony said without turning his head, "Come in." After the words fell, the door was pushed open, and Natasha, who was wearing a black professional suit, pushed the door and walked in directly. "Boss, I have made an appointment with the Minister of Foreign Trade of Wakanda to meet at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Do you think I need to prepare anything? Thank you for your hard work. I will go to see him in person when the time comes." Tony took a sip of red wine and said slowly, in addition to buying vibranium, the more important thing for him to come to Wakanda this time is to win over the Black Panther. Therefore, he naturally would not use any tough means, and everything should be done according to the rules. This is also the meaning of bringing Natasha with him, to help him deal with these sundries. Of course, there is a saying that, if there is something, the secretary dares to do it, and if there is nothing, then so, bringing Natasha is purely for work. At 12 o'clock, Tony and his partner had lunch in the hotel room, then changed clothes, and left the hotel, heading to the Ministry of Foreign Trade. At 1 o'clock, in the office of the Minister of Foreign Trade, Jamie, the Minister of Foreign Trade of Wakanda, received the two. Jamie is a fat black man, who looks fat and big-eared. It is obvious that he has been plundering a lot of money. Looking at Tony and his partner, Jamie showed a polite smile on his face. "Mr. Tony, welcome to Wakanda. The secretary has told me your request. We are happy to export vibranium to your company, but you also know that the production of vibranium is not much, so we are afraid that we can't do the 300 kilograms you requested." Jamie said politely. Tony tapped his fingers on the table and listened quietly, and after he finished speaking, Tony said, "Then how much can you provide?" 50 kilograms. Jamie gave an accurate number. Hearing this, Tony smiled. 50 kilograms. If that was all, why would he make the trip himself? "Mr. Jamie, I came all the way here, and you give me 50 kilograms. Is that appropriate?" Tony looked directly at Jamie, his eyes full of amusement. Hearing this, Jamie was not at all flustered, and said meaningfully, "Mr. Tony, I also know your position in the United States, but this is Wakanda, and everything must be done according to our Wakanda rules. It's fine if you want to get more vibranium, but you have to abide by the rules." After saying this, Jamie showed a shrewd smile, and Tony didn't understand what he meant. This was a fair and above board request for benefits. Tony didn't mind this. "Tell me, how much do you want?" "That's great." Jamie smiled happily and said, "Mr. Tony is really generous. I'm not a stingy person. How about this? Give me a 1% rebate, and let the secretary next to you have dinner with me. I'll help you get 300 kilograms of vibranium." Jamie said excitedly, looking around Natasha. Little did he know that after he said that, the shadow of the god of death had already thrown the death scythe at him. Chapter 214. Then this country no longer needs to exist. What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. Please say it again. Tony's voice, which was not pleasant or angry, slowly sounded. Jamie believed it and said, "I said, as long as the beautiful secretary next to you can." Boom. Before he finished speaking, Jamie's head suddenly exploded like a watermelon. Blood splashed all around, and when it came to Tony, it was blocked out of thin air. Natasha on the side was also stunned by the scene in front of her. Although she had sentenced Jamie to death, when he said that, she didn't expect Tony's method to be more explosive and direct than she imagined. For a moment, she was stunned and speechless. At this moment, Tony slowly stood up, adjusted his sleeves, and said slowly, "Who gave you the courage to say such words in front of me? Wakanda? If it is, then this country doesn't need to exist." Tony muttered to himself, and Natasha on the side blushed. What kind of men women like is not a definite thing. But there is one thing: when a man protects a woman, that is what women like most. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many heroes saving beauties in the world, and all the writers are happy to do so. Just then, the door of the office was pushed open, and Jamie's secretary walked in with a document. This was the contract that Jamie had asked her to prepare before. However, when she saw the scene in the office, She was stunned for a moment, and the next second, a loud scream came out of her mouth, instantly alarming the entire foreign trade department. Soon, a large number of people gathered around. What happened? Hearing this, Jamie's secretary pointed at the office blankly, and the crowd gathered in the direction of her finger. Suddenly, the cruel scene in the office came directly into their eyes. Jamie, the Minister of Foreign Trade, the boss of all of them, actually lost his head. For a moment, everyone felt confused, and it seemed that there were countless flies buzzing in their ears. Until a scream broke the silence. The minister is dead. After the words fell, everyone came back to their senses in an instant, and then looked at Tony and the other person in the office angrily. The minister is with them. They must be the murderers. Catch them. After saying that, several tall and strong guys rushed into the office, each with a face full of anger. But at this moment, Tony instantly turned his head to look at them, and his telekinesis was activated at the same time. Bang! The two guys who rushed in front didn't have time to say a word, and their heads exploded like Jamie. Witnessing this weird scene, everyone's heart was pounding, and the rest of the people stopped one after another, and everyone looked at Tony with fear. This guy is a devil. Run. After the words fell, the people who had been blocking the office scattered like birds and beasts. In a moment, the door of the office was completely empty. Seeing this, Tony said calmly, "Let's go." After saying that, he took the lead and walked out of the door. Natasha hurriedly followed, and the two left the office one after the other. And when the two left, the building of the Ministry of Foreign Trade was completely in chaos. The news of Jamie's death swept through the entire building like a tornado. How could everyone have the mind to work? Some called the police, some ran for their lives. As Tony and his partner walked down from the upstairs, the panic became more serious. The two were like the god of death passing through. Wherever they passed, everyone retreated. The Wakanda Police Department, which received the news, rushed to the office building of the Ministry of Foreign Trade as soon as possible. Wakanda is not big, and the area of the capital is not much bigger. In addition, the person who died was the Minister of Foreign Trade, so the speed of the police's response was extremely fast. Just when Tony and his partner walked out of the Ministry of Foreign Trade building, they were surrounded by many police outside the building. Police cars blocked the entrance of the Ministry of Foreign Trade, and all police officers were waiting with guns. When Tony and his partner appeared, the police's shouting sounded immediately. "You have been surrounded. Raise your hands and surrender. Otherwise we will shoot and kill you directly." Hearing this, Tony kept walking forward, and Natasha followed him quietly, like a young wife. Seeing this, the commander at the scene no longer hesitated and directly ordered, "Shoot." Bang, bang, bang. At the command, gunshots rang out, and many police officers did not hesitate at all, and pulled the trigger directly. Suddenly, countless bullets gathered into a metal storm, whistling towards Tony and the others. Natasha did not react to this at all, but just looked at Tony shyly. As for Tony, he did not react at all. Now, let alone bullets, even if he was hit by a missile, he would not lose a hair. So, facing the sky full of bullets, the two of them continued to move forward, as if they did not see them at all. At the same time, on the road they were moving forward, a series of black shadows gathered, and the next second, a black shadow ninja rose from the ground, holding a long sword in his hand, and waving it quickly. Dang dang dang. A series of ping pong sounds rang out, and everyone at the scene immediately saw a scene that frightened them. All the bullets were actually chopped away by the black shadow ninja with the ninja sword in his hand. Suddenly, everyone was stunned, and even the police officers who were shooting subconsciously stopped shooting, and looked at it dully. Giggling. Someone swallowed his saliva, which immediately caused a chain reaction. The sound of swallowing saliva was heard at the scene. "Commander, what should we do?" a police officer asked with a trace of fear on his face. Hearing this, the commander wanted to curse on the spot. "You ask me what to do, who should I ask?" Thinking this in his heart, the commander certainly couldn't say he didn't know. After all, he was the only commander at the scene, and everyone was waiting for him to make a decision. "Keep shooting. I don't believe that these monsters won't make mistakes." After saying that, his order was conveyed immediately. Suddenly, the gunshots that had stopped sounded again. The fierce gunshots sounded like a small war, which made the residents in the distance shudder. However, Facts have proved that the greatest invention of mankind, firearms, is useless for these things. So, no matter how crazy everyone shoots, they can't break through the blockade built by the Black Shadow Ninja. All the bullets will be chopped down after they come in front of them. Tony in the back had no interest in watching the monkey show, so after the second round of shooting, Tony directly ordered, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, the Black Shadow Ninjas rushed out immediately after receiving the order. Their speed was so fast that ordinary people could not react at all. Therefore, before the police station staff could change their magazines, the Black Shadow Ninjas started a monstrous killing among them. Chapter 215. I said he deserved to die, so he deserved to die. Screams continued to sound. Under the killing of the Black Shadow Ninja, the gate of the Ministry of Foreign Trade soon turned into a bloody battlefield. Broken arms were everywhere, and blood dyed the ground within a radius of 1 kilometer red. All the police officers, one by one, fell under the butcher knife of the Black Shadow Ninja, and no one survived. After witnessing this killing, Tony still looked calm. After all, he was a ruthless man who had exterminated a world, but Natasha's face turned a little pale. Although she was not new to the world, she had not experienced such large-scale killings many times, except on the battlefield, so she was naturally a little uncomfortable. Sensing her discomfort, Tony rarely showed his gentle side, gently took her hand, and took her away. Just after the two left, the kingdom of Wakanda, which received the news, sent people to the scene as soon as possible. After seeing the horrible bloody scene at the scene, many people vomited. They had to suppress their nausea and clean up the scene. Soon, the scene was filled with an unpleasant sour smell. Even the wind couldn't blow it away, which shows how exaggerated it was. Soon, the news reached the Wakanda palace, and the royal family was furious. In the meeting hall, an old black man wearing a crown had a face full of anger. Lawless. Daring. Send the army to me, and make sure to arrest the murderer. The king roared loudly, and the ministers were silent. It was not until the king vented his anger that a minister stood up and said, "Your Majesty, the murderer this time is not an ordinary person. Sending troops may not be able to arrest them, and it may even lead to a bigger tragedy." "What do you mean? Are you just going to leave it alone?" the old king roared. The minister who spoke waved his hand quickly. "Your Majesty, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, can the crown prince do it himself?" Hearing this, the old king frowned and then nodded. "Okay, I'll inform the crown prince." After the words fell, everyone present couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although T'Challa is the crown prince, he has always been regarded as a patron saint of the kingdom by Wakanda. Since the discovery of vibranium, there are countless terrorist organizations attacking Wakanda every year just to seize vibranium, and all these enemies were defeated by T'Challa. Therefore, T'Challa has long been a myth by the people of Wakanda. They believe that, as long as T'Challa takes action, there is no opponent that cannot be solved. Soon, the ministers dispersed, and the old king returned to the palace, and found T'Challa who was training in a training room. "Child, there is something that needs your help again," the old king said with a smile on his face. Hearing this, T'Challa stopped his action, and looked at the old king seriously and said, "What is it, father? Tell me." Hearing this, the old king immediately told the story again. After listening, T'Challa's face suddenly showed anger. "Damn it, how dare they kill in our country? Don't worry, father, I will definitely bring back the murderer's head." "Do you have the information of the murderer?" T'Challa asked. The old king waved to someone behind him, and immediately a guard stepped forward with a document in his hands. As a country, Wakanda is small, but its national strength is not weak. It immediately found out Tony's information and whereabouts. Of course, this is also because Tony did not hide it. After getting the information, T'Challa quickly flipped through it and nodded immediately, saying, "Leave this matter to me, father, you go to rest first." "Okay," the old king responded, and left with peace of mind. Because of the confidence built up by long-term victories, he felt that he didn't need to care about it. After handing it over to T'Challa, it only takes a few days for good news to come. So, after leaving here, the old king quickly put this matter behind him. On the other side, T'Challa memorized the information in his mind, and then threw it directly into the flames. Soon, He changed into his own battle suit, the Black Panther suit, and quickly disappeared from the palace. In the hotel, Tony and his partner, who had just finished an intense exercise, were lying on the bed. Natasha touched Tony's chest muscles. A hint of intoxication appeared on her face, but she quickly sobered up and said, "Isn't it a bit too much for us to just turn against each other like this? It's probably hard to get the vibranium you need this way. It doesn't matter if they don't give it to us, we can get it ourselves," Tony said indifferently, and his overbearing words made Natasha's heart tremble. "Then when do we start the action? I can help you get intelligence." "No, I'm waiting for someone now, let's wait for him first." "Okay." Natasha knew what to ask and what not to ask. At this moment, Tony suddenly stood up and put on a bathrobe. "What's wrong?" Natasha was a little confused. "It's okay, the person I'm waiting for is here, you continue to rest." After saying that, Tony opened the window and jumped out of the window. The next second, on the roof of the hotel, Tony lit a cigar in his bathrobe and looked into the distance. In the distance, a black shadow was approaching Tony's position quickly. His speed was extremely fast, like black lightning. After a while, the black shadow came close to Tony. It was Chala, who ran out of the palace. Looking at Tony standing on the roof in his bathrobe, Chala recognized him as his target at a glance. Therefore, he turned around and ran straight to Tony. Bang! With a light sound, Chala landed on the roof of the hotel. "Are you waiting for me?" Chala took the initiative to speak. Tony nodded. "Yes, otherwise, do you think you can come to me so easily? It seems that you are very confident. You killed someone and didn't even run away. Why should I run? My goal has not been achieved yet." Tony exhaled a puff of smoke from his mouth and said slowly. Hearing this, Chala's eyes moved. Purpose? What purpose? Obviously, he wanted to trick Tony, who saw through his thoughts at a glance, but he didn't mind. "My purpose is very simple. One is vibranium, and the other is you." "Oh. So, you are here to kill me?" "No, I'm here to recruit you," Tony said calmly, and Chala was immediately angry and laughed. "Your way of recruiting is really special. You killed someone in my territory, and then you said you are here to recruit me? He just deserves to die." "How do you know he deserves to die? Is there a law that stipulates it?" Chala said a little unhappy. But Tony remained calm. "I said, he deserves to die, then he deserves to die. There is no law, but I'm above the law." Tony's words were arrogant, even so arrogant that Chala frowned directly. Chapter 216. Chala's final choice. Chala did not comment on Tony's words. He had seen too many arrogant people in the fight against crime over the years. In Wakanda, everyone must follow the law, and no one is exempt, Chala said with a serious face, full of firmness in his words, which was his belief. Looking at this scene, Tony frowned. What he least wanted to meet were these superheroes with firm beliefs, because you have no way to change their minds. The representative figure Captain America, Tony never tried to pull that guy into the dark camp. Is it because he is not qualified? Not really. But such people are like stones in the toilet, smelly and hard. No matter how hard you try, it's all in vain. At the moment, Chala is obviously the same kind of person as Captain America. Captain America cares about the American people, while he cares about the people of Wakanda. In a sense, the two are very similar. But he is different from Captain America. Captain America is the kind of person who will not surrender, even if he dies in battle. Even if America is destroyed, he will fight to the last moment. Therefore, he became the spiritual leader of America, but he is still just a warrior. And Chala is much more tactful than him. He will compromise and weigh the pros and cons. Therefore, he became the king of Wakanda. This is also the difference between the two, and one of the reasons why Tony did not give up. You are right, but I want to tell you that the so-called law is meant to be broken. No one likes to be bound. This is human nature. The only difference is that some people do not have the power to break the rules, and some people do not have the determination to break the rules. Coincidentally, I have both, so the so-called truth will be trampled by power, Tony said slowly, and Chala's brows gradually frowned. The reason why he was chatting with Tony here was to judge his character and analyze his weaknesses. This is also one of the secrets of his invincibility. Only if you know your opponent well enough can you defeat him. But on Tony, he saw a layer of hazy fog, which enveloped him. Even he could not see Tony's heart clearly. This made him feel a huge pressure. But he was very clear about one thing. Tony's existence was a huge disaster for Wakanda. So no matter what, he had to take him down today. While thinking, his body tensed up, which was a sign of a beast hunting. Sensing the changes in Chala's muscles, Tony's mouth suddenly curled up a smile. It seems that you are going to do it. Then come on, let me see how strong you are, so that you have the confidence to stand in front of me. Tony said casually. From beginning to end, he looked lazy, without any intention of defense. Even after he finished speaking, he took a puff of the cigarette in his hand, and the smoke came out of his mouth and gradually dissipated in the wind. At this moment, Chala moved, and he seized the opportunity. That feeling came from his fighting intuition developed from long-term fighting, and he believed it without a doubt. Boom. A terrifying sonic boom sounded, and Chala's figure instantly disappeared from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already close to Tony. He could even see the smoke rings that had not yet been completely blown out of Tony's mouth. Seeing this, he was instantly delighted. He did not deny that Tony was powerful. Even if he simply stood there, it made his hair stand on end. He was definitely a dangerous guy. However, the victory in the battle will never belong to the arrogant guy. Chala said. Bang. His fist hit an object with a deafening sound. Chala looked along his arm. When he saw what he hit, his pupils suddenly shrank, and a great fear rose in his heart instantly. Because he hit the air. Specifically, it was the barrier created by Tony using telekinesis, and Tony himself was watching the gradually distorted expression from a close distance with a smile on his face. Gilu. Chala swallowed his saliva and grinned. Can we do it again? I didn't adjust my state just now. After saying that, Chala wanted to run instantly, but at this moment, a terrifying pulling force or gravity appeared under his feet. Suddenly, he felt that his legs were as heavy as if they were filled with lead. At this moment, his speed was even slower than that of ordinary people. This made Chala's heart sink continuously, and he felt that he was going to die. At this moment, Tony raised his palm and snapped his fingers. The next second, Chala only felt a terrifying force acting on his stomach. A feeling of upheaval rose from his stomach, and his figure was directly knocked out and fell heavily on the roof of the hotel. Suddenly, the whole hotel was shocked. It seems that you don't have the power to defend your truth. However, I can give you another chance. Join me and I can give you strength. Tony made another invitation. He didn't think much of Chala. He just valued the number of draws brought by Chala's joining. Therefore, Tony has always been very tolerant in this regard. I didn't rest well today, and I'm not in the best condition, so I won't accept your defeat like this. Chala racked his brains to think of a way to get out, and kept talking nonsense to delay time. But something he didn't expect happened. Tony seemed to really believe him, and he nodded and said, okay, then I'll let you go back and rest, and then you will admit defeat with all your heart. Really? Chala was a little overjoyed. He didn't expect that something that only happened in movies would actually happen. For a moment, he stood up and wanted to escape. But at this time, Tony's voice came again. Of course, rest is not without price. If I'll let you go this time, I will take the lives of 10,000 people in Wakanda as the price. After that, every day you delay and don't come to me, I will continue to take the lives of 10,000 people in Wakanda. On the second day, 20,000. On the third day, 40,000, and so on, until there is no Wakandan left. As soon as these words came out, Chala's face changed instantly. He was stunned and began to think about the difficult problem Tony had set for him. As soon as he left, 10,000 Wakandans would die immediately. That is to say, he exchanged the lives of these 10,000 people for the chance to escape. This caused a serious conflict with his fairness in following the law. On one side is his own life, and on the other side are the lives of 10,000 people. How should he choose? If he had joined the Avengers, he would definitely choose to sacrifice himself instead of others. But now he doesn't have such great feelings. So in the choice of who lives and who dies, he finally chose human nature. If people don't work for themselves, they will be punished by heaven and earth. And this is what Tony wants to see. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217. That's a terrible guy. I will definitely avenge those innocent people. Chala looked at Tony angrily and then quickly left here. Looking at his leaving back, Tony did not stop him and even showed a smile at the corner of his mouth. Some things only have 0 times and countless times. This time he can sacrifice 10,000 people to escape. Then next time, he won't care about sacrificing 10,000 more people. So, when he made a choice, Tony had already won. Go, enjoy your feast, Tony murmured in a low voice. Behind him, the cute little ones of the shadow devouring group chirped and then scattered. After these little guys left, Tony turned around and returned to the hotel room. On the other side, at the Wakanda airport, a plane slowly landed, and Nick and a group of SHIELD personnel got off the plane one by one. Looking at the exotic scenery around them, everyone quickly retracted their gazes and looked at Nick, waiting for his arrangements. Dr. Doom stood in the crowd and also chose to follow the crowd. After all, Nick had a lot of contact with Tony, and he could be considered one of the people who knew Tony best, so what he heard was correct. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Nick coughed lightly. Everyone, according to the intelligence, Tony should come here for the rare metal of Wakanda Kingdom, vibranium, so I decided to contact the Wakanda royal family first. If we can get their help, then we will have the home advantage. I have contacted the reception staff of Wakanda. You will go to the hotel to rest first. The captain and I will go to talk to the kingdom of Wakanda. Understood, Director. Everyone responded and then walked out of the airport. Arriving at the hotel, where they were staying, Nick arranged everyone, and then took the captain out of the hotel, and got on the car of the Wakanda Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This time, he came in the name of the US ambassador. Although Wakanda is self-sufficient, it still has to give some face to the world's most powerful country. Since the application had been submitted before, it was the old king of Wakanda who received them this time. Soon, the car drove into the palace and slowly stopped. Led by a Wakandan attendant, Nick and his companion walked directly into the palace hall. At this moment, besides the guards, there were only 2 people in the hall. One was the old king of Wakanda, and the other was Chala, who had just escaped. The father and son sat opposite each other, and the atmosphere seemed a little solemn. Nick and the captain noticed that the atmosphere was not right when they entered the door. They looked at each other with some confusion in their eyes, wondering what had happened in Wakanda. Greetings, His Majesty. Although they were confused, Nick and the captain still saluted respectfully. After all, this was on someone else's territory, and courtesy was not a problem. The appearance of the two broke the solemn atmosphere in the hall, and the old king instantly showed a polite smile on his face. You two ambassadors have come from afar and worked hard. Originally, the king should prepare a welcome banquet for you two, but I need to deal with some things now, so can you two wait a little longer? Hearing this, Nick showed a smile on his face. Of course, but I wonder if His Majesty the King would mind if we sit in on it. Maybe we can help you solve the problems you are facing, Nick asked. It's not that he likes to meddle in other people's business, but after all, they will discuss cooperation later. If they leave a good impression now, the discussion of cooperation may be smoother. Faced with Nick's request, the old king obviously hesitated. After all, what they were going to say was not a glorious thing, but Nick's help made him a little moved. After all, the United States is the world's #1 power, and their strength is still terrifying. If they really help, then maybe this matter can be solved. Considering these 2 points, the old king couldn't help but fall into a dilemma, and for a while he didn't know whether he should agree. But just as he was hesitating, Chala looked at the captain. He could feel that this man had a powerful force hidden in him. If he could help them, they might be able to relax a little. At that moment, Chala said, "You two can listen if you want." After he finished speaking, the old king looked at Chala, his eyes still full of hesitation. "Son, this..." Before he could finish, Chala interrupted him directly. "Father is fine. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Now, the main thing is to deal with that guy." If we can have an extra helper, why not do it? Besides, the two ambassadors are also Americans, and they may know that guy better. Okay. The old king was convinced, and he immediately invited Nick and the others. Then please take a seat. Thank you, your majesty. Nick thanked him, and although he sat down quietly, the captain followed without saying a word. This time the communication was mainly Nick, so he was too lazy to speak. As the two sat down, Chala immediately talked about the details of his encounter with Tony. At first, Nick and the others didn't care much. After all, he was just a superhuman, and he didn't take him seriously now. But when Chala revealed Tony's identity, Nick and the captain couldn't sit still. Wait, your highness, are you talking about Tony, the American arms dealer? Nick said with a serious face. Chala didn't react a little. Why did the two react so strongly? But he nodded subconsciously. Yes, that's the entry information we found. Is there something wrong? Chala asked in confusion, and Nick nodded immediately. Of course there is, and it's very wrong. To be honest, we came here this time for this guy. This is a terrifying guy. Not only is he powerful, but he also acts crazy. No one knows what he will do next. So, I want to join forces with Wakanda. What do you think? Nick didn't hide anything, and told the whole story. Hearing this, Chala and the old king were also shocked. They didn't expect that Nick and others' target was also Tony. However, it just so happened that both parties had a grudge against Tony, so they hit it off and decided to join forces to deal with Tony. Seeing that the two agreed, Nick and the others also showed joy on their faces. They didn't expect that things would go so smoothly, as if they were helped by God. For a moment, the two were more confident in defeating Tony, and they might even be able to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Tony in one fell swoop. Their minds were full of thoughts, but they quickly restrained their thoughts and discussed with Chala how to deal with Tony. Chapter 218. The plan is being implemented. Tony's existence has become a mountain on everyone's head, so no matter how cautious you are when facing Tony, it is not too much. The two sides discussed for several hours before finally determining the action plan. The first is the choice of battlefield. It must not be chosen in the city, otherwise, if the war starts, I don't know how many people will die. In this regard, Chala suggested that Tony could be led to the wild, and there was a ready-made excuse. Tony needs vibranium, and they can use this as an excuse to lure Tony to the battlefield they selected. In addition, Wakanda will send out an army equipped with the most advanced scientific and technological equipment. Although it is not certain whether it can threaten Tony, it is a good thing to cause a little damage to Tony. In addition to these 2 points, the rest depends on the extraordinary people led by Nick. It can be said that they are the main force. If they can't fight Tony, then no matter how many arrangements are made, it will be useless. Neither side is a procrastinator, and they acted quickly. After finalizing the plan, Chala took people to choose a place and ambush in advance, while Nick took the captain back to the hotel and asked them to prepare in advance. As for the old king, he was responsible for luring Tony out. The two sides had a clear division of labor, and Nick and the others said goodbye and left the palace. A day passed quickly. On the surface, Wakanda was still prosperous, but secretly, a fierce undercurrent had already surged. In the hotel, where the SHIELD members were staying, the SHIELD members who had already known the situation were even more solemn and nervous. Dr. Doom, on the other hand, although he knew the news, still acted as if nothing had happened. Looking at Hela, who was silent on the side, Dr. Doom thought for a moment and walked over. "You have fought with that guy. How strong is he?" Dr. Doom asked curiously. Although his clone had fought with Tony, his clone was too weak, and Tony was not the same Tony as before, so he wanted to know Tony's latest information. Listening to Dr. Doom's question, if it was any other question, Hela might not pay attention, but since it was about Tony, she didn't let her temper get the better of her. She was silent for a long time, and finally said, "Very strong." "Oh." Dr. Doom raised his eyebrows. "How about compared to me?" Hearing this, Hela looked at Dr. Doom strangely, looked at him carefully, and then said, "If it were you, I would dare to fight alone." If Dr. Doom didn't have an intuitive feeling before, after hearing what Hela said, he suddenly felt a little pressure in his heart. Although Hela's words were very impolite, they showed that she might not even have the courage to fight Tony alone. This was not in line with Hella's temperament, nor was it in line with her understanding of her, so there was only one explanation. That was that Tony was really strong to a point that frightened Hella. Thinking of this, Dr. Doom slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. He has always been pursuing powerful strength, but at his current level, there are not many ways for him to continue to improve. Now, he saw in Tony a direction to become stronger. For a moment, he, who was not very enthusiastic about dealing with Tony, suddenly became proactive. He even discussed with everyone about the enemy plan, which was absolutely impossible before. Although Dr. Doom has always been calm, he has been imprinted with the arrogance of being a strong man in his bones. And when a proud person is willing to bend down, it means that he attaches great importance to this matter. Suddenly, there was a knock on Tony's room door in the hotel where Tony lived. Tony and his partner, who were enjoying breakfast, couldn't help but look at the door. Then Tony calmly turned around and continued to eat, while Natasha put down the dishes in her hand, got up and walked to the door. As the door opened, a middle-aged man with sweat on his forehead suddenly appeared in front of Natasha. At this moment, Natasha was wearing pajamas and showed a lot of charm, but everyone just looked at her and hurriedly lowered their heads. His name is Harry, he is the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Trade, and he has a grudge against Jamie. When Jamie was still alive, he had been sitting on the bench. When Jamie died, he had planned to continue sitting on the bench. But he didn't expect that a transfer order would allow him to successfully sit on the throne of the minister. At first, he thought it was God's blessing, but when the old king met him, he realized that this was not God's blessing, but Satan's curse. The old king actually asked him to contact the murderer who killed Jamie yesterday, and to find a way to lead him out of the city. He saw the killing at the entrance of the Foreign Trade Department yesterday with his own eyes, and the blood at the entrance of the Foreign Trade Department has not dried yet. Letting him contact such a killer, isn't that asking him to die? Unfortunately, he had no choice under the king's order. Unless he wanted to cut off his relationship with Wakanda, he had to obey orders. So, he could only grit his teeth and take on this task and knock on the door early in the morning. From the sweat on his forehead, it can be seen how much pressure he is under now, and even knocking on the door is an action that he finally mustered up the courage to do. So, in this case, although Natasha is very tempting, it is obviously not as important as his own life, so he dare not look at her at all. Moreover, he heard that his predecessor's death seemed to be because of this woman, which made him even more taboo about Natasha, fearing that he would lose his life by looking at her for a second longer. Natasha naturally didn't know what Harry was thinking. Looking at the unfamiliar Harry, Natasha frowned and said, "Who are you? Is there anything?" After saying that, Harry quickly replied, yes, I'm the new director of the Ministry of Foreign Trade. I received your foreign trade application. I heard that you want to purchase 300 kilograms of vibranium, so I came here to discuss it," Harry said carefully, and Natasha's mouth showed a hint of sarcasm when she heard it. Before, they talked properly and followed the formal procedures, and these people acted like 2.5 million. Now, they come to talk like dogs, which is simply a humiliation. But Natasha is not stupid. She knows that Tony just killed their people yesterday. How could they be so kind and sell vibranium to them? So there must be a conspiracy. Thinking of this, Natasha's eyes flashed with murderous intent. She didn't know whether to take action. She had no choice but to look back at Tony and ask him for instructions. Tony seemed to be completely unaware. After feeling Natasha's gaze, he nodded and said, "Let him in first. I want to hear his cooperation plan." "Okay, boss," Natasha responded and stepped aside to make way. Looking at this scene, Harry immediately swallowed his saliva, his eyes full of fear. Chapter 219 Harry's Desire to Survive. Looking at the road that was less than 5 meters away from the room, Harry seemed to see the god of death waving at him, and his body trembled for a moment. However, he did not dare to delay, fearing that Tony would get impatient and kill him directly, and he would die unjustly. So, after seeing Natasha make way, Harry swallowed hard and walked in carefully. Soon, he saw Tony enjoying breakfast in the living room and immediately bowed and said, "Mr. Tony, have you eaten? Do you want to eat something together?" Tony invited without even raising his head. No, no. Harry waved his hands repeatedly and then quickly said, Mr. Tony, this is the case. Because the 300 kilograms of vibranium you want is a huge amount, I came here today to invite you to go to the gold mine outside the city with me to look at the goods. Those vibraniums have not been polished yet, so they are generally not sold to the public. You can take a look at them yourself. If you like them, I will help you arrange them. If you don't like them, I can only express my regret. I wonder if Mr. Tony is free. Harry tried his best to act calm, but he still stuttered when he spoke, and he didn't know if it was because of too much pressure. Tony didn't care about this, and nodded naturally, saying, no problem, I'll go with you later. Hearing this, Harry was relieved. The task assigned by the old king was completed, and he didn't expect it to be so simple. However, staying with Tony still made him feel a bit stressed, so after seeing Tony agreed, he said goodbye and said, in that case, I'll wait for you downstairs. After saying that, without waiting for Tony to reply, Harry turned around and left. When he passed by Natasha, he smiled flatteringly and then quickly slipped away. After he left, Natasha returned to the room and asked in confusion, this is obviously a conspiracy. Why did you agree to that guy? If they really wanted to, they would have sent the vibranium directly. Why did you have to go there in person? Hearing this, Tony's face did not change at all. He put down the bowl and chopsticks in his hand, wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin, and said slowly, since they want to play, let's see what tricks they are going to play. In addition, I'm also very curious about where they get the confidence from. Wait a minute, you just stay in the hotel and wait for me to come back. If you are bored, go out for a walk. Are you not going to take me with you? Natasha pouted a little unhappy. You'd better stay here. It's not appropriate for you to go, Tony said with a smile, and got up to go back to change clothes. In fact, the reason why he didn't bring Natasha was because he felt that he would definitely meet some acquaintances this time. Rather than putting Natasha in a dilemma, it would be better not to let her know about this. As for why Tony knew it, don't ask, it's just intuition. Just like Nick was familiar with Tony, he was also familiar with Nick's methods after letting Nick jump in front of him for so long. When that Harry appeared at the door, he felt a familiar taste. This is Nick's favorite method. First get people to no man's land, and then beat the opponent to death. To be honest, Tony was not surprised by Nick's arrival and targeting. He knew his own danger, and he also knew that Nick would not let him, a dangerous person, wander around. It's just that he was very curious about what kind of confidence Nick had to fight against himself. All this was still unknown to Tony, but it also made him more interested in this trip. After all, life still needs a little surprise occasionally, right? Soon, Tony changed his clothes. A dark suit matched his perfect figure, making him look like an elegant nobleman. After looking in the mirror, he felt good about himself and walked out of the room. He hugged Natasha and walked downstairs to the hotel. When he walked out of the hotel gate, a line of cars had been waiting at the door of the hotel for a long time. Tony looked at Harry, who kept looking at his watch, and walked over. The sound of footsteps approaching made Harry subconsciously turn his head and look over. Seeing Tony, Harry was obviously stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted and praised, "Sir, you are so handsome in this dress." "Really? I think so too." Tony accepted the compliment without hesitation and then got into the back seat of the car under Harry's service. Harry wanted to get in the car from the other side, but thinking of the oppression brought by Tony, he decisively got on the passenger seat. After the two got in the car started and drove out of the city. Tony was indifferent to this. He closed his eyes and rested as soon as he got in the car. Tony didn't speak, and Harry didn't dare to say anything. For a moment, the atmosphere in the vehicle became somewhat depressing. The driver clearly felt that the atmosphere was not right, so he focused on the road ahead all the way, making himself a transparent person. After knowing that the vehicle had left the city, Tony, who had been closing his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes and said, "There should be vibranium at our destination this time." Tony asked a strange question. Although Harry was stunned at first, he quickly reacted, "Yes, yes, that's good. If there is vibranium, then I will spare your life. If there is no vibranium, think about the consequences yourself." Swish. As soon as Tony finished speaking, Harry's head was covered with cold sweat. He didn't dare to doubt Tony's words. Fortunately, the place they were going to this time was indeed a vibranium mining site, and there must be enough vibranium. This made Harry feel relieved. Tony didn't speak again on the road, and Harry didn't dare to talk casually, so the convoy came to a mountain range 100 kilometers away in silence. This is one of the vibranium mining sites in Wakanda, located in the valley, with towering cliffs on both sides, a very suitable place for ambush. As the car stopped, Harry hurriedly got down from the co-pilot and respectfully opened the back door for Tony. If someone who didn't know the inside story saw this scene, he would think that some nobleman and his butler were traveling together. It was because Harry was too servile. Only Harry knew that this trip was not simple, and it might even be a fight between gods. He couldn't afford to offend either side, so he could only try to find a balance point to see if he could save his life. This is also the sadness of the weak, whose fate is controlled by the strong, and even if they want to resist, they can't. Mr. Tony, the vibranium mining site is inside. I'll take you in now, Harry introduced, and Tony raised his hand to interrupt him. Since you have worked so hard all the way, you don't have to go in. I'll go in by myself. After that, Tony walked towards the canyon, leaving Harry standing there in a daze. Chapter 220. Action failed. Prepare to fight. Walking into the canyon alone, Tony looked a little lonely. In order to play this drama well, Chala and others did not even evacuate the workers who mined vibranium, and they continued to work. So when Tony entered the canyon, he still saw a scene of bustling work. Seeing this, Tony couldn't help but smile with disdain. These guys even implicated innocent people in order to deal with him, which was really disgusting. Although his style was not much better, he was a real villain and was upright, while those guys sacrificed innocent people in the name of justice. But none of this was Tony's business, and he was not interested in saving these guys. With the pass Harry gave him, Tony successfully entered the mining area. A person in charge of the mining area quickly came up with a flattering smile on his face. Obviously, Chala and others had already greeted him. Arrange everything so that it is flawless, and try to reduce Tony's guard. Unfortunately, they didn't know that Tony had seen through everything from the beginning, so all their preparations were in vain. Where is the mined vibranium? Ignoring the person in charge's flattery, Tony spoke directly. Upon hearing this, the person in charge immediately took Tony to the storage location of the vibranium without any obstruction. Yesterday, he received an order from his superiors to meet all of Tony's requirements, so now it was natural that Tony's words were what they said. Just as Tony followed the person in charge into the mining area, a drone was firmly locked on Tony's figure in the sky above the canyon. On the cliffs on both sides of the canyon, a large number of Wakanda soldiers had already ambushed there. Not far away, a tent was set up here, with a large number of monitoring equipment placed in it. Chala and the people from SHIELD gathered here. Looking at Tony's figure on the monitoring screen, everyone's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. Nick said expressionlessly, "Have you arranged everything?" Hearing this, Chala was full of confidence. "I have had people bury 300 kilograms of explosives in the warehouse, which can be detonated in an instant. As long as he enters the warehouse, he will definitely feel the surprise I have prepared for him." Listening to Chala's words, the people present were not very excited. They knew Tony's strength very well. Although 300 kilograms of explosives were powerful, Tony's strength was even more terrifying, and it might not have an impact on him. The reason why they still had to carry out the plan was just to catch Tony off guard and cause him some damage. As for directly blowing Tony to death, no one present had this idea except Chala. At this moment, Dr. Doom and the crowd suddenly smiled and said, "Are you sure it's a surprise? I think he may have noticed our presence." Dr. Doom suddenly spoke, causing everyone's face to change. "It shouldn't be possible. We haven't been exposed," Johnny said uncertainly in the crowd. Hearing this, Dr. Doom shook his head. "This is not your problem, but if this guy's really as strong as you say, he must have noticed something. After all, the strong have their own intuition, which is called a whim in the East." After this, everyone's face became ugly again, but at the critical moment, Nick interrupted Dr. Doom. "We will know if it is true after watching it. Don't panic." After saying that, Nick glanced at Dr. Doom with a hint of warning in his eyes, asking him not to disturb the morale of the army. Dr. Doom understood what Nick meant and smiled slightly, not angry. The reason why he said this was to make everyone mentally prepared and not pin their hopes on such things. But Nick's consideration was not wrong, so he didn't say anything else. Now the purpose of everything is to take down Tony. Before that, Nick is still the leader of everyone. Time passed little by little, and everyone stared at Tony in the picture. As Tony gradually approached the warehouse, everyone couldn't help but feel nervous. Although they knew that, even if the explosives successfully hit Tony, they would not necessarily cause him any harm. But what if a miracle happened? Therefore, everyone still held a glimmer of hope in their hearts, expecting to see the scene of Tony being seriously injured. Finally, Tony walked into the warehouse under the leadership of the person in charge. Seeing this, Nick immediately shouted, "Detonate." After that, Chala, who was in charge of the remote control, pressed the button in his hand without saying a word. Boom. The horrible explosion shook the canyon, and a beam of fire quickly enveloped all directions with the warehouse as the center, directly submerging the entire camp. The miners who were still working hard became victims without knowing it. For a while, the canyon was full of flames. But at this moment, no one cared to feel sad for those innocent miners. As the explosion sounded, Nick picked up the wireless communication on the table and shouted, "Attack." After that, his order was immediately heard by the soldiers ambushed on both sides of the canyon. Suddenly, the soldiers who had been told to do so aimed at the warehouse, and fierce gunfire rang out. The modified and powerful firearms fired armor-piercing bullets one after another, forming a terrifying metal storm that completely submerged the warehouse. Da-da-da. Gunfire continued to be heard in the air. Inside the tent, everyone held their breath and stared at the surveillance screen, not daring to miss anything. They didn't have to wait too long. Just a few minutes after the gunfire, there was a sudden movement in the firelight on the surveillance screen. A figure slowly walked out of the flames, exuding a sense of leisurely strolling. It was as if he was not walking in a terrifying explosion site, but in a beautiful scenic spot. Seeing this, an indescribable disappointment surged into everyone's hearts. Although there had been some speculations beforehand, when this scene happened, everyone still couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Tony seemed to be surrounded by an invisible barrier, and the flames retreated wherever he passed. The terrifying metal storm also completely lost its power after coming in front of Tony, suspended in front of Tony, and was blocked by something. At this moment, Tony in the picture flicked his fingers, and everyone seemed to hear a crisp sound. The next second, the bullets that were originally lingering around him flew back one after another, and suddenly, screams came from the wireless communication in Nick's hand. Listening to the miserable screams, everyone's face became extremely ugly. Nick took a deep breath and turned to look at everyone and said, "The operation failed. Prepare for battle." Chapter 221. I'm not used to being a small villa. Nick's words were full of determination. Although the others said nothing, their faces were also solemn. The only one who could still smile was Dr. Doom. Although everyone praised Tony so much that he couldn't help but feel apprehensive, he also had his own pride and confidence, no less than anyone else. So, at this moment, he was the most relaxed. Soon, the group walked out of the tent, and before they could continue to move forward, a figure suddenly rose from the canyon and appeared in front of everyone in an instant. Tony stood in the air, his face full of calmness. The explosion just now hardly caused him any harm, and at this moment, he didn't even have a trace of disorder. Looking at him, Nick and others stopped, and Tony's voice rang out at this moment. "You finally came out. Nick, I'm not saying anything bad about you. You dared to fight me with real swords and guns before, but now you have become a rat in the sewer, hiding your head, and showing your tail, and shrinking back." Listening to Tony's ridicule, Nick's eyes condensed. He ignored Tony's ridicule and thought of more things. "Do you know we are targeting you?" "Almost, I guessed it." After saying this, Nick's face darkened, and he subconsciously glanced at Dr. Doom. He was really guessed by this guy. "Then why did you go there?" Nick was a little puzzled. "Because I need vibranium. I didn't expect you to really put it there, so I don't have to waste my time. As a thank you, I decided to let you choose your own way of death." Tell me how you want to die. Tony said confidently, and he had the confidence. As his voice fell, a solemn atmosphere filled the air. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. stared at Tony closely, waiting for Nick's order. As long as he gave the order, everyone would act immediately. And Nick did not mean to hesitate. At this point, it was either you or me, so there was no point in delaying time. Especially this time, Nick could feel the resolute killing intent in Tony. Obviously, he would not hold back for various reasons like before. Thinking of this, Nick couldn't help but take a deep breath. Just when he was about to give an order, but at this moment, Dr. Doom suddenly walked out. Are you Tony? I've heard of you for a long time, and we finally meet today. Victor? Tony was a little curious, and Dr. Doom slowly shook his head. You are talking about my clone, and now it's my real body. Oh, are you going to go against me too? Want to avenge your clone? Tony raised his eyebrows. He really didn't notice him before, mainly because Dr. Doom looked completely different from Victor, so before he revealed his identity, Tony didn't know that he was actually the famous Dr. Doom. At that moment, Tony's playful mentality was immediately restrained, and he turned to look at Nick. This guy is something, and he can invite such a person to deal with him. Don't get me wrong, the clone and I are one. I'm still alive, and there's no question of revenge. But I'm definitely unhappy with you. After all, you killed my clone. How about this? You let me study your power, and I give up targeting you. This is a win-win situation. Dr. Doom smiled and suggested, his lifelong pursuit is to gain more powerful power. To this end, he has been constantly trying various ways to gain power over the years. When Tony appeared, he keenly felt that the power system in Tony was something he had never seen before. So, he suddenly proposed this condition. As his voice fell, before Tony expressed his opinion, the people on the S.H.I.E.L.D. side went crazy. Hey, how can you do this? Aren't we in the same group? Now it's a critical moment of the war. Can you be more reliable? Fuck, what do you want to do? Kill all of us? Everyone kept announcing, with dissatisfaction on their faces. They decided to eliminate Tony because of the joining of Dr. Doom. Now this guy is inclined to turn against them at the last minute. Who can bear this? Listening to the abuse of the crowd, the corners of Dr. Doom's mouth that were originally full of smiles suddenly disappeared, and a dangerous aura emanated from him. Nick, who was closest to Dr. Doom, reacted instantly. His expression changed immediately. He turned around and looked at the people behind him and yelled, "Shut up, everyone. He is the foreign aide I invited. He is not from S.H.I.E.L.D. and does not need to be bound by S.H.I.E.L.D. Don't make a scene with this matter." After that, Nick turned around and apologized to Dr. Doom. "Please calm down, sir. They are just angry for a moment and are not targeting you. Don't take it to heart." Nick kept apologizing, but in fact he had already cursed in his heart not only Dr. Doom, but also others. He couldn't see the situation clearly now. Dr. Doom can be said to be one of their alliance. It is a fluke that such a person can help, but these guys actually want to use worldly ties to trap him. It's simply like an old man hanging himself, looking for death. I wonder if their hope of victory will be slim once Dr. Doom withdraws. What's worse is that, if Dr. Doom is ridiculed by this group of people and joins forces with Tony, wouldn't they die faster? It was because he thought everything through that Nick quickly interrupted everyone. Otherwise, if they continue to talk, they might have to face two powerful men today. Oh, Director Nick won't blame me for doing this? Seeing Nick speak for him, Dr. Doom couldn't help but curl up a playful smile. After listening to his words, Nick answered seriously, "You are just an external aide I invited. You have the right to choose freely. I won't force you to make any choice. If you really make a deal with Tony, I only hope that you cannot participate in the war. I hope you can do it." As he said, Nick bent his waist and showed an impeccable attitude. Even Dr. Doom was shocked when he saw this. The joke on his face disappeared, and he was replaced by a serious expression. "No problem. Then I'm relieved." The two ended their conversation, and Dr. Doom continued to look at Tony, waiting for him to make a decision. Tony looked at the two guys in front of him with a strange look. "Can't you go farther away to plot? Why are you by my side? Are you afraid that I can't hear it?" Tony complained madly in his heart, and when he saw Dr. Doom's confident look, his eyes suddenly turned cold. Sorry, I don't have the habit of being a guinea pig for others, Tony said coldly, and Dr. Doom was stunned for a moment. Chapter 222 Dr. Doom is unhappy. After being stunned, Dr. Doom smiled, but his smile looked a little dangerous. You actually rejected me, are you sure? Sure. Tony folded his hands and nodded calmly. For others, it is undoubtedly a good deal to let someone study their own power to reduce a great enemy. But for Tony, it is a shame. Since when can his enemies come to him and be arrogant? So, without hesitation, he rejected Dr. Doom's so-called deal. Watching this scene, Nick, who had a blank expression on the side, was already very happy at this moment. Sure enough, it was right as he knew. Tony was still the same Tony, confident and domineering. He had always been the one to threaten others, who dared to threaten him. It was precisely because of this that he was able to act very calmly. Because he knew that, even if Tony wanted to negotiate a deal with others, it must be after he took the absolute initiative. Tony would never agree to someone like Dr. Doom who threatened to fight at the beginning. His heart was full of joy, but Nick did not show the slightest on his face. As for the rejected Dr. Doom, he was completely furious at this moment. He could tolerate the ridicule of ants, because people would not care about ants. Therefore, even if the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. were sarcastic, he was not very angry. To put it bluntly, these guys were not at the same level as him, and they were not even qualified to make him angry. But Tony was different. Dr. Doom still recognized his strength, so Tony's rejection directly annoyed him. At that moment, a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. How long has it been? There are still people who dare to reject my kindness. They are simply ignorant of the sky and the earth. After saying that, Dr. Doom's figure instantly disappeared from the spot and appeared above Tony's head in the blink of an eye. A dazzling light bloomed in his palm, and a terrifying magical power with a hint of repression bombarded Tony directly. Boom. The violent roar made everyone's ears buzz. Tony, who was at the center, looked at this scene, waved his hand, and the power of fire gathered instantly and blasted out to meet Dr. Doom's attack. Suddenly, the two huge forces collided fiercely in mid-air, setting off a violent explosion. The extremely terrifying shock wave instantly rushed out from the center of the explosion in all directions. All obstacles on the cliff were instantly flattened, and the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. also used their strength to resist one by one, and looked at the two with incredible eyes. Especially the Quicksilver brothers and sisters. They thought that their strength was already terrifying, but after seeing the fluctuations of the two people fighting, they knew what horror was. With one blow, the world was destroyed. These two people are simply not human, but more like gods walking in the world, real gods. Thinking of this, the Quicksilver brothers and sisters couldn't help but look at Hela and Thor. After staying with the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a long time, they also knew the origins of the two people. It seemed that these two people came from the realm of gods and were high gods. The brother and sister were thinking wildly here, and in the sky, Tony and Dr. Doom's battle entered a white-hot stage from the beginning. As a strong man who controls the forbidden power, Dr. Doom is definitely not weak. After fighting with him, Tony could feel that his strength was stronger than that of the fallen Odin. It was not that Odin was a fake and really that weak. But when Tony fought with Odin, Odin was already old. Not only was his time coming to an end, but he also used most of his strength to suppress Hela. Therefore, his combat effectiveness was definitely not as good as that of his peak period, and only 20% or 30% of it remained. Dr. Doom was different. He was still in his prime, and his strength was completely at its peak. Naturally, he was stronger than Odin at that time. Even compared with Tony, he was only a hair's breadth away. In addition, this guy controlled a lot of spells and forbidden powers. If it were an ordinary person, he would probably not be able to withstand the crazy output of Dr. Doom. Only Tony, who was also a pervert, could fight with him crazily without losing the upper hand, and even firmly suppressed him. For a while, Dr. Doom's face became a little uglier. He had boasted about all his tricks, but now he was being beaten by others. This made him feel angry. Freeze the world. Dr. Doom roared, and his magic power was continuously drawn out of his body. Suddenly, the sky changed in a radius of dozens of miles. A huge blizzard fell instantly, and the originally suitable temperature around him dropped rapidly. especially in the center of the battlefield, where Tony was. The temperature dropped to below absolute zero in an instant. Tony, who was no longer afraid of cold or heat, felt a chill at this moment, and his body shivered subconsciously, which showed how low the temperature was. Not to mention the people from S.H.I.E.L.D., who were watching the battle. They were instantly frozen like dogs. However, the temperature where they were was not as low as Tony's. After all, Dr. Doom's attack was mainly aimed at Tony, so they could still withstand it. Good tricks. After praising him, Tony's body was suddenly filled with a trace of fire, which directly dispelled the cold that had invaded his body. Seeing this, Dr. Doom frowned, but his attack did not stop. A mysterious force field instantly acted on Tony. Tony seemed to bear a heavy burden at this moment, and his body sank slightly. However, he had a force field, and Tony also had gravity. With a thought, a powerful gravity burst out, not only instantly breaking the mysterious force field of Dr. Doom, but also directly acting on Dr. Doom. Suddenly, a crackling sound came from Dr. Doom's body. Although his body was good, it was obviously not as strong as Tony's, so Tony couldn't bear it. For a moment, his face turned red, and a trace of madness flashed in his eyes. Damn, what kind of power did you cultivate? Why is it stronger than me? Dr. Doom roared, and his heart was even more depressed. He felt that Tony was just like his replica, not only had comprehensive abilities, but also what he could do, Tony could do, and he was one step ahead of him. He could do what Tony couldn't do, but he could always find a way to restrain it. For example, the frozen world just now. Under this move, as the target of the attack, Tony would bear the impact of absolute zero. Even if his body defense was strong, Dr. Doom had the confidence to defeat him. But the flame controlled by Tony was so overbearing that even absolute zero couldn't freeze it. For a moment, he felt a little helpless. Feeling the pressure on his body getting bigger and bigger, he used several methods, but couldn't get rid of Tony's gravity. At this time, Dr. Doom finally turned his head to look at Nick and others, and shouted, "What are you looking at? Help." Nick and others were stunned for a moment, and some couldn't believe that Dr. Doom would actually say words for help. But fortunately, Nick reacted quickly and immediately ordered, "Let's go together." Chapter 223, The trio died. As soon as Nick's voice fell, everyone was awakened instantly. Hala and Thor acted immediately. One of them held Thor's hammer, and the other mastered the power of death. The lightning shining with white light and the power of death emitting black light bombarded Tony at the same time. Feeling the fluctuations coming from the side, Tony frowned suddenly. He had to change his mind, and his telekinesis was activated instantly, hitting the attacks of the two people hard. Boom. The space trembled violently, and a strong explosion swept again, shaking everyone's hearts. Immediately afterwards, Johnny summoned flames and quickly exerted his own speed. The captain held a shield, and Banner instantly turned into a green giant, rushing towards Tony. At this moment, everyone can be said to be 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their magical powers. Tony became the target in the center of the field, constantly attracting everyone's attacks. Among the attacks of the crowd, except for a few people who could pose a certain threat to Tony, the remaining guys were not a big threat to Tony. However, these guys were like flies, annoying and finally annoyed Tony completely. "Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish." Looking at the crowd, Tony said in a cold tone. As his voice fell, the figures of the Black Shadow army suddenly emerged on the ground. The Black Shadow Ninja, the Black Shadow Thornblade, the Black Shadow Troll, the Lava Troll fused with the Desperate Virus, the Black Shadow Nightbat, the Black Shadow Warrior, the Black Shadow Alien, the Black Shadow Devourer. The 7 legions attacked at the same time. In an instant, the sky within a radius of dozens of miles suddenly became gloomy, and the terrifying dark aura began to spread wildly with the appearance of the 7 legions. The people who were originally attacking suddenly stiffened, and a great fear rose in their hearts instantly. Except for Hela and Dr. Doom, everyone else showed a trace of horror on their faces. Under the impact of the majestic dark power, they felt that they were gradually losing control of their bodies. For a moment, everyone looked at the Shadow Army with inexplicable fear. Even Tony was stunned at this moment. This was the first time he summoned all the Shadow Army in one breath. I didn't expect that their appearance together would have such an effect. Not only could they suppress the enemy, but their own strength would also be greatly enhanced. If the 9 Shadow Army came out together, wouldn't it be possible to directly trigger the final darkness? Inexplicable thoughts flashed in his mind, but it was too early to say these things now. Soon, Tony retracted his thoughts, looked at the frightened people, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He waved his hand and said, "Crush them." As soon as the words fell, the Shadow Army attacked. Inexplicable roars sounded, and the 7 legions rushed directly towards everyone. Their evolved strength is no weaker than that of ordinary extraordinary people. With the blessing of the dark power, Johnny and his friends are no match for them. Under the impact of the Shadow Army, everyone no longer had time to harass Tony, and fell into a bitter battle. He retracted his gaze from the battlefield below, and looked at Dr. Doom and Hela standing side by side. Tony shook his head, and said with a smile on his face, "I'll give you a chance. If you surrender to me, I'll spare your lives." Tony spoke slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, Hela and Dr. Doom snorted at the same time. Although they didn't say anything, their refusal was obvious. Seeing this, Tony sighed helplessly. Although he didn't have much hope, he was still a little depressed to be rejected. Strong men like Hela and Dr. Doom have their own pride, and are basically impossible to surrender to others. This led to Tony recruiting many members of the Dark Alliance, but most of them were no longer able to keep up with his pace. Now the members of the Dark Alliance have basically no sense of existence except for brushing rewards. Tony can only hope that the system will have other arrangements later. Putting away his wild thoughts, his face became cold again. 2 rays of light gathered in his eyes, and then rushed towards Dr. Doom and Hela, and Tony launched another attack. Roaring, explosions, screams, constantly interweaving on the battlefield. As an ordinary person, Nick was not qualified to participate in such a battle, so after the battle started, he retreated to a secret place and watched the battle. Seeing Tony blocking all the shield people by himself, a silent silence suddenly emanated from him. For a moment, he couldn't help but flash a trace of recollection in his eyes. When he first confronted Tony's strength was strong, but not so strong that it made people despair. Every time, he felt that he was just a little bit away from winning, so he kept targeting Tony and wanted to suppress him. However, as time passed, every time he thought that his side was strong enough, Tony showed stronger strength. It was like a dead loop. He kept struggling with stronger power to suppress Tony, but every time he ended in failure. I don't know when, Tony actually became his inner demon, lingering in his heart, lingering. Just like now, although the battle is still going on, Nick already has a premonition in his heart that he has lost again. At that moment, he couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile on his face. Tony, why can't you just die? He was talking to himself, and at this moment, a scream suddenly came from the battlefield. Invisible Woman Susan was completely torn apart by the Thornblade core, and her beautiful face was completely frozen at this moment. Sister. Not far away, Johnny watched this scene and suddenly let out a painful roar, and the flames on his body became surging at this moment. I'm going to kill you. Roaring, Johnny took the initiative to rush into the Thornblade core. The powerful flames turned many black shadow thorns into ashes, but more black shadow thorns drowned him in an instant. A few seconds later, the black shadow thorns supported other battlefields. Johnny, who was still roaring just now, had been torn into pieces of meat. Witnessing the death of 2 old friends, Ben's eyes shed a line of tears. As a team, their feelings were much deeper than others. Although they were not related by blood, to Ben, they were like his own brothers and sisters. And now, both of them are dead. Ben, an honest man, was completely furious. Unfortunately, reality is not fiction. Even the green fat man couldn't turn the tables just by being angry, let alone him. Even because of the death of Johnny's 2 siblings, more shadow troops began to besiege others, causing everyone to feel more pressure. Soon, a series of explosions sounded, and the lava troll that was fighting with Ben chose to self-destruct because it could not break Ben's defense. Under a series of explosions, Ben's solid body was completely torn apart. At this point, all 3 researchers were killed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224. The UN devouring beast swallowed the wrong person. The death of Susan and the other two was just the beginning, and the people who were still alive were in more and more danger. Chala struggled to hold on under the siege of many shadow troops, and was completely injured. Although Quicksilver was extremely fast, he had to protect Wanda, and his own speed could not be fully exerted, so he was not much better under the siege of the shadow troops. The only two who could continue to support were Captain and Banner. One of them held a shield and blocked the continuous attack of the shadow troops with his strong physical fitness, and the other relied on his own anger. Not only did his combat power continue to increase, but he even suppressed the shadow troops. He was the only bright spot on the battlefield. But unfortunately, Banner could not change the whole situation, because after Susan and the other three died, most of the shadow troops rushed to him, firmly suppressing his pace, making him unable to rescue others. Nick stood in a hidden place and looked at the situation on the battlefield, and a trace of sadness could not help but appear on his face. He knew that he couldn't wait any longer. If he continued to wait, everyone would be defeated here. By then, even if they barely defeated Tony, they would not be able to suppress the situation in the United States. Thinking of this, Nick slowly exhaled a breath of foul air, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Although he decided to deal with Tony after Doctor Doom joined, it did not mean that he placed all his hopes on Doctor Doom. He also prepared a backup plan, but the backup plan he prepared was very risky, and he would try not to use it if he could. But now the situation has collapsed. If he doesn't use it, maybe they will die here today, and then there will be no chance to use it. So, seeing that everyone has shown signs of defeat, he finally made up his mind. He didn't pay attention to the Shadow Core. He knew very well that, although the Shadow Core was powerful, Tony was still the real master of all this. As long as Tony was dealt with, other things would naturally be solved. If Tony couldn't be dealt with, then even if the Shadow Core in front of him was dealt with, it would only take Tony another wave of summons. Thinking of this, Nick immediately took out a bell from his arms. Clang clang clang. The crisp sound of bells echoed, but the people in the battle had no time to pay attention. At this moment, the space behind Nick did not need to produce a violent fluctuation. The next second, a small black hole appeared, and a cat slowly walked out. Meow. The little guy's cry was very pleasant. Nick turned around and looked at it, and his face suddenly showed joy. Little guy, you are here. I'm afraid I need your help this time, Nick said with a smile, not treating the cat in front of him as an ordinary animal at all, but speaking very enthusiastically. As Nick's voice fell, the kitten took another look, and then jumped lightly, and immediately jumped onto Nick's shoulder. Looking at this scene, the smile on Nick's face became more and more charming. He knew that this was its answer, and it agreed. Thinking of this, Nick immediately pointed his finger at Tony in the sky. Did you see that guy? Help me deal with him. Meow. The kitten responded, as if to say no problem. The next second, its dark pupils suddenly looked up at the sky. As soon as its gaze fell, Tony and the other two who were fighting each other felt it, and a trace of fear rose from their hearts. As soon as this feeling came out, the three of them separated at the same time, looking at the other two inexplicably, thinking that the other party wanted to use some tricks to die together. But soon, they saw each other's eyes, and a trace of doubt rose from the bottom of the three people's hearts at the same time. Just as the three people were suspicious of each other, suddenly, a loud shout came from below. Lock on the target. Kill him. After the words fell, everyone subconsciously looked down. There was nothing good to see on the battlefield, so their eyes fell on Nick, who was hiding at the first time. Although his position was indeed hidden, it was not difficult for Tony and the other two to find him. When their eyes fell on Nick, Dr. Doom and Hela glanced at him, and did not think that the premonition of danger in their hearts was caused by Nick. But when Tony saw Nick and the cat on his shoulder, his face changed instantly. A tingling sensation suddenly rose in his heart, and Tony's eyes were fixed on the cat on Nick's shoulder. The next second, Tony didn't think about it, and his speed was immediately exerted to the extreme, and he moved from the original place in an instant. The Devourer, who received the order, also launched an attack at this moment. It bit towards the place where Tony had just stood. Snap. A burst of shattering sounds rang out, and Hella and Dr. Doom, who hadn't reacted to what was happening, were instantly swallowed up by the Devourer along with the space. For a moment, a huge black hole appeared above everyone's head, a dark piece, and a missing piece went into the Devourer's stomach. Since the time when Tony escaped was the same as the time when the Devourer launched the attack, Tony directly avoided this danger by a millimeter. When the danger was over, Tony turned his head and looked at the disappearing Hella and the two of them hitting a piece of space, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch, and the whole person couldn't help but feel a little scared. Fortunately, his reaction speed was fast enough, otherwise, one more person would be swallowed. However, he was also confused in his heart. Where did Nick get this Devourer from? Although he knew that such a terrifying thing existed a long time ago. But because it had never appeared, he thought that there was no such thing as Devourer in this world. After all, this thing was connected to a parallel universe in its body, which was really terrifying. But he didn't expect that this thing actually existed, and it almost pitted him as soon as it appeared. Just when Tony was scared, Nick was also stunned at this moment. He wanted the Devourer to swallow Tony, not Dr. Doom and the other two. Now, Tony ran away, and the strong men on his side were also killed by him. Thinking of this, Nick couldn't help but look at the Devourer with a serious face. "Let those two guys out quickly, you caught the wrong people," Nick said loudly, and the Devourer looked at him strangely, as if to say, "Didn't you ask me to catch them?" However, Nick was destined to not understand the meaning in the Devourer's eyes. Fortunately, the Devourer will not kill people immediately after swallowing them, so he still has a chance to save people. In order to not break his previous promise, the Devourer really listened to Nick in everything. As Nick finished speaking, Hella and Dr. Doom ran out of the Devourer's mouth at the same time, but their faces looked a little dark at this moment. Chapter 225. Nick Fury finished filming. The two looked at Nick with murderous eyes. Although they didn't say anything, their expressions showed that they wanted an explanation. Seeing this scene, Nick couldn't help but flash a trace of embarrassment on his face, and he could only quickly explain, "Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. It's all this guy's fault. It's all his fault." After saying that, Nick glared at the Devourer fiercely. In response, the Devourer meowed with an innocent look on his face. This made Nick's mouth twitch, and he could only helplessly take the blame. "Sorry, both of you. It's my mistake." Nick apologized seriously, but at this moment, Hella and the others were no longer thinking about him. Hella and Dr. Doom looked at the cat on his shoulder at the same time, and their eyes narrowed immediately. "Is this the Devourer?" Dr. Doom asked. Nick didn't mean to hide it, and nodded immediately. "No wonder, but the element Devourer is almost extinct in the entire universe. I didn't expect you to still have one. It's just luck," Nick said modestly, and Hella interrupted at this time. "What a pity." "What do you mean?" Nick was a little puzzled. Seeing this, Dr. Doom couldn't help but explain. Just now was the best opportunity to exile Tony, but after being prepared, the role of the element Devourer was infinitely weakened. Although his ability is very unstoppable, even if we fall into its mouth, we can't escape, but with precautions, it can't easily swallow us again. So Hella said it's a pity. The attack just now was the best opportunity, but it's a pity that you didn't seize it. At the end of the speech, Dr. Doom sighed and shook his head, while Nick was full of astonishment. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. However, there was not much time for the three to reminisce. Soon, Tony's figure appeared in the sky again. He looked at Nick, then at Hella and the others, and immediately hooked his fingers at them. "Let's fight." Hearing this, Hella and Dr. Doom looked at each other, and without hesitation, they soared into the sky again. Before leaving, Dr. Doom sent a voice message to Nick. "Always pay attention to the battle situation. Hella and I will create opportunities for you. When the time comes, release the Devourer immediately." Nick did not reply, but his eyes were fixed on the three people who were fighting again. The battle started again, and Tony keenly felt that the fighting style of Dr. Doom and Hella had changed. The two guys no longer fought and rushed like they did at the beginning, but kept using various means to trap him. Feeling the change in the fighting style of the two, he didn't know what the two guys were thinking. It was obvious that they wanted to use the Devourer to trick him. Once swallowed by the Devourer, Tony didn't know if he could still appear. Although he couldn't die, he didn't accept being exiled. Therefore, after realizing the purpose of the two, Tony didn't give them any chances at all. In addition, Tony had many means, so after a long time, the two still couldn't trap Tony. However, Hela and Doctor Doom were not in a hurry. They were like experienced hunters in the forest, carefully testing everything. Failure did not make the two lose confidence, but became more patient. Because they could fail countless times, but Tony would be exiled if he failed once. This caused Tony to be restrained in the fight. He was originally able to fight against the two, but now he was slightly at a disadvantage. This was the first time such a situation had occurred since he traveled through time. For a moment, Tony was very angry, and his eyes looking at Nick also had a hint of murderous intent. At that moment, Tony thought about how to break the situation in his mind. Soon, a plan took shape in his mind. Seeing that Tony was restrained and at a disadvantage, Doctor Doom and Hela keenly sensed the opportunity. The two people's eyes crossed in midair, and the tacit understanding developed from long-term fighting made them instantly understand each other's thoughts. At that moment, the offensive in the hands of the two changed at the same time. The two who had been trying to trap Tony, at this moment, both used their killing moves. Tony seemed to have not expected the two to suddenly change their tactics. His face suddenly changed, and he punched out with both fists to block them. However, due to his haste, Hela and Doctor Doom broke through Tony's resistance at the same time, and the death energy and magic power hit Tony's chest heavily. Poof! Suddenly, a mouthful of blood sprayed out of Tony's mouth, and his whole body flew backwards rapidly. Coincidentally, the direction he flew backwards was exactly the direction where Nick was. But at this moment, Nick did not notice these at all. Instead, he looked at the scene of him being blown away with a shocked face. Suddenly, an indescribable excitement surged from Nick's heart. How long has it been since Tony debuted? He has always been invincible. No matter what kind of enemy or opponent he faces, he can easily defeat the opponent. Before, let alone making Tony spit blood, it was extremely difficult to even shake his body. And now, Tony was spitting blood and flying backwards. At this moment, Nick seemed to see the scene where Tony's invincibility myth was broken, and for a moment he seemed a little absent-minded. It's no wonder that he reacted so strongly. After so long, he finally saw the hope of defeating Tony. How could he not be excited? Suddenly, a sharp pain and the shouts of Hela and Doctor Doom appeared at the same time. Be careful. Looking down at the hand that suddenly appeared on his chest, Nick looked back and saw Tony standing behind him expressionlessly. As for the Devourer on his shoulder, Tony threw it directly to the Shadow Kingdom to avoid any accidents. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of Nick's mouth. So your target is me. I thought I finally saw hope, but now think about it. How could it be so coincidental? This is all your plan, right? Yes. Tony nodded and admitted. Nick coughed violently a few times, and he didn't know if he was angry. I really underestimated you. Nick wanted to say something, but Tony's arm suddenly shook and instantly shattered his whole body, and his body was torn into pieces. Nick, director. The people in the battle looked at this scene and roared in anger. Hela and Doctor Doom looked extremely ugly at the moment. They didn't really care about Nick's death. After all, both of them were ruthless people. If it weren't for Tony's appearance, they should have been the targets of S.H.I.E.L.D., so they didn't have any opinion on whether Nick died or not. What made them angry was that Tony actually tricked them, used their power to get close to Nick, and killed Nick instantly. And they didn't realize it yet, and foolishly cooperated, which was simply an insult to them. For a moment, the murderous intent in the hearts of the two people surged. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.